Chapter 4652. With his and Kang Mingming's strength, it was hard enough to deal with Lin Yi alone, not to mention that they would have to deal with other powerful competitors. This matter must be planned in the long run and prepared in advance. While Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming were plotting, the other people were also gearing up for the next trial test in West Island. Only Lin Yi, as usual, was meditating and practicing after returning to his room. However, Lin Yi only meditated for less than an hour this time. He couldn't help thinking of Ning Xuefei's resentful and hopeful expression. At this time, he was really not in the mood to practice. Although he had secretly made up his mind to participate in the trial test in West Island before at the banquet, Lin Yi was still a little hesitant at the moment. After all, this thing happened too suddenly, and the relationship between him and Ning Xuefei was not natural, far from the point of marriage. If he really succeeded this time, what about his other female friends? Would it be fair to them? What would they think after knowing it? However, it was impossible for Lin Yi to be cruel and ignore Ning Xuefei. When he thought of this girl's expression at the banquet, he couldn't help feeling a little heartache. When he was hesitating, the door was suddenly pushed open. Lin Yi heard the sound and looked up. It was Laner and Han Jingjing from Shanghai Lane. Why did they come out in the middle of the night instead of resting in the island owner's palace? Why are you two here? Don't you sleep so late? Lin Yi looked at the two women strangely, and then added, "Where is Fei Fei? Why doesn't she come? The one who tied the bell should untie it." Lin Yi felt that if he wanted to solve the current dilemma, he had to make it clear to Ning Xuefei face to face. At least, he had to thoroughly understand her mind first. What if those so-called hints before were just his wishful thinking and misunderstanding? This matter was related to Ning Xuefei's marriage, so there was no room for carelessness. Lin Yi felt that even if he wanted to help Ning Xuefei solve this predicament, the leader must be Ning Xuefei herself. Only when she personally said her wish, Lin Yi would be able to realize it for her without any distractions. Otherwise, everything would be based on guessing, and he would always be uncertain. She can't come. Shangguan Laner shrugged her shoulders helplessly. One was marked by the company one kept. She had learned some of Lin Yi's habitual little tricks to perfection. Can't come? Lin Yi was taken aback for a moment and then asked nervously, "Why? Did something happen?" "Don't be nervous, big brother Lin. Feifei, she's okay. She can't come out with us because of the rules of West Island. Any aristocratic woman over the age of 18 must wait in the boudoir to choose a husband, and she can't come out and run around. Fei Fei is the princess of West Island, and so many eyes are watching her," Han Jingjing explained. "I see. That is to say, before choosing a husband she will lose her personal freedom?" Lin Yi couldn't help feeling a little sad for Ning Xuefei. Being the princess of West Island was her luck, but at the same time, it was her great misfortune. Although it had only been a few days since he came to West Island, Lin Yi found a very interesting phenomenon. Although feminism was prevalent in West Island, the higher the level, the less obvious feminism was. All kinds of behaviors were more like a patriarchal society, and even to some extent, it was even worse. Take marriage as an example. In a normal feminist society, the woman should have the absolute initiative. It was more like for a man to stay in the boudoir. But in fact, it was true for the ordinary class of West Island. But when it came to the level of aristocracy, women were the opposite. Lin Yi speculated that the main reason why West Island did this deliberately was that they wanted to connect with the outside world. After all, aristocratic women were likely to marry the big forces of the outer island. If even they absolutely followed feminism, it would not bring benefits to West Island, and it might bring a great disaster. Yes, but it's not a big deal for Fei Fei if she can't go out of the island master's palace. She is originally a little homebody like Jingjing, and now she is staying in the research room. Shangguan Laner said. The vocabulary of the secular world was at her fingertips, and she spoke it more fluently than Lin Yi. "That's true, but I'm afraid she doesn't feel good in her heart. After all, her marriage can only be decided by God." Lin Yi sighed and couldn't help but become a little silent. "Brother Lin Yi, if you can't be chosen this time, Fei Fei will be sad for the rest of her life. You must not fail." Han Jingjing looked at Lin Yi with burning eyes and said, Yes, Fei Fei is not willing to marry those who are blinded by greed. Little junior brother, you can only win this time. We all believe in you. Shangguan Laner encouraged him. Well, this is just our wishful thinking. Fei Fei may not think so. Lin Yi had to smile bitterly. He didn't know what Ning Xuefei was thinking, and that was the most troublesome thing. Who said that? Han Jingjing suddenly took out a letter and handed it to Lin. She said, Brother Lin Yi, Fei Fei asked me to give this to you. Lin Yi was slightly stunned when he saw this. He took the letter and opened it. He found that there was no content on it. There was only a line of delicate handwriting. To be precise, there were only 6 words: see or never see again. At first glance, it was simply a prose poem of the stream of consciousness. It made people confused and didn't know what she was trying to express. However, this was not a problem for Lin. He used to be a scholar in the secular world. He was instilled with all kinds of knowledge by old Lin since he was young. There was a period of time when he used a broken netbook to learn poetry and ancient prose. It was in the name of improving the self-cultivation of an assassin. After pondering for a while, Lin Yi already understood what Ning Xuefei wanted to express. It seemed to be implicit, but it was actually very straightforward. Either they could always see each other, or they would never see each other again. In the future, they would be on different sides of the world and would never have any interaction with each other. How could they always see each other? The answer was naturally self-evident. If they couldn't do this, once Ning Xuefei married someone else's wife, then the birthday party just now would be their final farewell. Holding the thin letter in his hand and looking at the delicate handwriting on it, Lin Yi was stunned. Before this, he had never thought that Ning Xuefei would be such a strong woman. Either they would stay together forever, or they would be on different sides of the world. There was no room for compromise between the two. Chapter 4653. Alright, quiet down. Our mission is complete. Let little junior brother have some peace and quiet. Shanghai Laner looked at Lin Yi's calm expression and smiled slightly. She believed that Lin Yi would not let her down, nor would he let Ning Xuefei down. Absolutely not. Lan? You want me to stay with him? Han Jingjing looked at Shanghai Laner blankly, and then looked at Lin. Suddenly, there was a trace of shyness on her face. Puff! Shanghai Laner was stunned for a moment, and then she burst into laughter when she realized it. Even Lin Yi was amused. Han Jingjing's IQ was unquestionable. She was definitely a real monster, but it was limited to various kinds of research. At other times, she would be silly from time to time, just like now. After being laughed at by Lin Yi and Shangguan Lan, for a long time, Han Jingjing finally reacted. Her face flushed red, and even her neck turned red. She lowered her head as much as she could. If there was a crack in the ground, this girl might really be able to squeeze her head into it. In the end, Han Jingjing was dragged away by Shanghai Laner, who laughed so hard that she was out of breath. Lin Yi was left alone in the room again. Holding Ning Xuefei's letter in his hand, he secretly made up his mind and no longer hesitated. Ning Xuefei was a princess of an island, and she could write such a letter. If Lin Yi still didn't understand her intention, he should be struck by lightning. This time, he couldn't let her down no matter what. After eliminating the hesitation in his heart, Lin Yi suddenly became refreshed again. He knew that this time, the trial of the West Island gathered masters from all walks of life, and the process would certainly not be so smooth. It was inevitable that there would be danger everywhere. However, since his debut in the secular world, Lin Yi had never been afraid of anything. He had even broken through the dragon's pool and tiger's den in the South Island unscathed. Would he be afraid of this trifling trial of the West Island? Casting aside all distracting thoughts, Lin Yi was about to adjust his state and start cultivating. At this time, a familiar aura suddenly appeared outside the door. Lin Yi was immediately delighted. Qi Wenhan had arrived. Brother Qi, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Lin Yi hurriedly stepped forward to open the door and warmly welcomed her in. This was the promise he made with Qi Wenhan with his eyes at the banquet before. It was rare for his old friend to meet in this place in West Island. Naturally, they should have a good gathering. I'm sorry, I haven't completely settled down on my side, so I was delayed. I've made you wait for a long time, Brother Ling. Chi Wenhan smiled apologetically, and after sizing up Lin Yi for a while, he suddenly stepped forward and gave Lin Yi a bear hug. Brother Ling, you really are a good person. Those bastards of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency even dared to say that you died in the South Island. Ha, I knew they were bullshitting. Chi Wenhan had known Lin Yi's real name for a long time, but he was used to calling him Brother Ling, so he didn't bother to change it back. Ling 1 and Lin Yi were similar anyway. Hee, it's a long story, but I won't die so easily. Lin Yi smiled and led Chi Wenhan into the room, pouring a cup of spiritual tea for him personally. Then he asked, by the way, Brother Chi, why are you here? Is it possible that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency has a good relationship with West Island? How is it possible? West Island is a giant that dominates Heaven Stage Island, and we are just a small escort agency. If it weren't for you, they wouldn't even have heard of us, so how could we have any relationship? Chi Wenhan laughed at himself, and glanced at the letter on the table out of the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but feel a little strange, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Hearing this, Lin smiled. Chi Wenhan wasn't belittling himself. Before him, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was only a little famous in the Wayark Sea, and it might not even be well known in other seas of the Southland. Not to mention West Island, which was thousands of miles away and had nothing to do with each other. This time, I'm here in the name of the Southland Escort Agency Alliance. Taking advantage of this rare opportunity, my father asked me to come out and see the world. If there's a chance, I'll make some useful connections. This is the benefit of being the overlord of the Southland Escort Agency, because I can represent the whole sea of the Southland. Otherwise, if it's only under the name of our Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, people won't even look at us, and maybe we can't even enter the door, Chi Wenhan said with a bitter smile. One step at a time. The Equal of Heaven Escort Agency being able to walk out of the sea of the Southland is already a gratifying progress. At least it shows that it's a whole level higher than before. Lin Yi smiled and analyzed. What's more, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency is now the overlord of the Southland Escort Agency. Any big force that wants a share of the sea of the Southland can't avoid you in the end. As long as there are benefits, there will be connections. This is the perfect strategic period for the escort agency to go further. Don't say it's us, okay? Don't forget, Brother Ling, you also have shares. Chi Wenhan said seriously. Hey, it's us. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh, and continued to ask, so, Brother Chi, you came all the way to West Island this time to attend the birthday party and expand your connections. Not really, these are just incidental things. I actually came here with a heavy responsibility, Chi Wenhan said, shaking his head. Heavy responsibility? Lin Yi was stunned. Yes, you saw what happened at the birthday party, right? My father specially sent me here this time for this princess of West Island. She will definitely choose a husband for her coming-of-age ceremony at the age of 18, and he asked me to find a way to fight for it. Although the chances are not big, if I succeed, we will have a giant like West Island as our backer, and then our Equal of Heaven Escort Agency will be invincible, Chi Wenhan said. Hearing this, Lin Yi's expression suddenly became a little strange. He had guessed that there must be a lot of competitors this time, but he never thought that even Chi Wenhan would be one. This really made him speechless. What's wrong? Chi Wenhan noticed Lin Yi's expression, and suddenly said in a daze, Brother Ling, are you the same? Oh, by the way, Brother Ling, you are the special envoy of North Island. I heard that North Island and West Island have always been on good terms, so it's normal for you to have this kind of mission. Lin Yi didn't know what to say for a moment, and his eyes unnaturally swept over the letter on the table. He couldn't say that he and Ning Xuefei had been together for a long time, could he? Following Lin Yi's eyes, Chi Wenhan's eyes also fell on the letter. From the beginning, he had noticed that the letter was not completely folded, and it was easy to see the delicate girl's handwriting on it. In an instant, Chi Wenhan suddenly understood something in his heart. He looked at the letter in surprise, and turned to look at Lin Yi in disbelief, saying, Brother Ling, are you and Ning Xuefei? Lin Yi smiled bitterly and said nothing. Chapter 46-54. He patted Lin Yi's shoulder and said, What's more, I'm not optimistic about this at all. I know my identity and strength best. Although the requirement to participate in the trial of West Island is that the strength requirement cannot exceed the Yuaning realm, but this time, who am at the peak of Gold Core realm, am at the bottom. This was true. If only the local disciples of West Island participated in the trial in the past, Qi Wenhan, who was at the peak of Gold Core realm, was definitely not weak. But this time it was different. The people who participated in the trial were the elites of each island. Those who had the ambition and courage to target Ning Xuefei, the princess of West Island, were not easy to deal with. Most of their strength should be at the Yuaning realm, not lower than this. Otherwise, it was unknown whether they could survive to the end of the trial, let alone reach the sky in a single bound. And there is another more important reason why I don't want to participate in the competition. A strange light suddenly bloomed in Qi Wenhan's eyes. This man, who had always been cheerful and calm, blushed for the first time at this moment, which was really surprising. Brother Qi. Lin Yi's heart moved. He was no stranger to this kind of burning eyes, because most people had this stage. Yes, I have someone I like. Qi Wenhan scratched his head in embarrassment and confessed to Lin Yi. When did it happen? When Lin Yi heard this, he suddenly became interested. When he left South Continent, there was no news at all. With Qi Wenhan's free and easy style, he should not hide this kind of thing so deeply. Not long ago, I fell in love with her at first sight. Qi Wenhan suddenly looked gloomy and said with some disappointment, she is a master of the Yuaning realm, but I am only at the peak of Gold Core realm, alas. Seeing Qi Wenhan sigh, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel happy and said with a smile, so what if your strength is not as high as the other parties? The key is whether she has feelings for you or not. You are so worried about gains and losses. This isn't like Brother Qi's style. Qi Wenhan couldn't help but blush at Lin Yi's words. He awkwardly said, I also know that I can't be so worried about personal gains and losses. As a man, when it's time to fight for something, I absolutely can't shrink back and admit defeat. I understand these principles, but I just can't control my own brain. He couldn't help but think in this direction. After all, she's not an ordinary cultivator, but the daughter of the owner of the treasure ship transportation company in the South Continent. The daughter of the ship king? Lin Yi was stunned when he heard this. When he was in the South Continent, he had heard someone mention this treasure ship transportation company by chance. If it was just an ordinary transportation company, Qi Wenhan, as the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, would definitely not feel inferior. However, the other party was a treasure ship transportation company, and the meaning behind it was completely different. In this Heaven Stage Island, a strategic existence like a treasure ship had always been owned by those top forces. This principle was also true in reverse. A force that could own a treasure ship was definitely a tyrant that could not be underestimated in the 5 great Heaven Stage Islands. It should be known that even the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, which had become the overlord of the escort agencies in the South Continent, was far from qualified and had a treasure ship. Qi Wenhan, as the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, was faced with a treasure ship transportation company with such a deep background. It was no wonder that he would be so worried about personal gains and losses and sigh in despair. His strength was not as high as the other parties, and his background was not as good as the other parties. If he rashly approached them, it would be very normal for others to say that he was overestimating his own capabilities. At that time, they might not even be friends anymore. The king of ships? You can say that? Qi Wenhan was stunned for a moment. Wasn't a treasure ship the king of ships? The treasure ship transportation company itself was the uncrowned king. So that's how it is. You don't need to sigh, I have a way. Lin Yi's heart moved slightly. He took out a small wooden box from his pocket and handed it to Qi Wenhan. You don't need to worry with this. What is it? Qi Wenhan curiously took the small wooden box. He discovered that although the box was ordinary, the cool aura coming from it made him feel refreshed. He hurriedly opened it and was immediately shocked. He was a person who knew what was good and what was bad. It was actually a condensed nascent golden pill. With your strength and foundation, it's actually time for you to break through. As long as you take this condensed nascent golden pill, It should be able to protect your nascent soul. Lin Yi smiled slightly. With Qi Wenhan's ability, as long as his strength could be on equal footing with the other party, he would definitely not feel inferior anymore. After all, if one were to really talk about it, although the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency could not compare to the Treasure Ship Transportation Company, it was definitely not too far off. No matter what, it was still the overlord of the escort agencies in the South Continent. This is too precious. Brother Ling, you should keep it for yourself. I'm not in a hurry. The condensed nascent golden pill was like a hot potato in Qi Wenhan's hands. He immediately became flustered and desperately stuffed it back to Lin. You're not in a hurry? You're not in a hurry, but the lady is. Lin Yi glanced at him, and angrily threw the small wooden box back to Qi Wenhan. He curled his lips and said, She's the daughter of a ship king. Who knows when she'll get married? At that time, you won't even have time to cry, and you're still not in a hurry? Don't blame me for not reminding you as a brother. Once you come across this kind of thing, you must grasp it tightly. Otherwise, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Qi Wenhan instantly fell into a dilemma after hearing Lin Yi's words. He naturally understood this principle. Moreover, according to his knowledge, there were many young masters who had designs on this sweetheart. If he acted too late, he might really regret it for the rest of his life. However, Qi Wenhan was very clear about the value of a condensed nascent golden pill. Especially since this was a high-quality condensed nascent golden pill, no matter how many spirit jades one had, one might not be able to buy it. Even if his relationship with Lin Yi was not too bad, he still did not dare to rashly accept such a valuable item. What are you still hesitating for? I've never seen you so wishy-washy before. With our friendship, could it be that you can't even accept a mere condensed nascent golden pill? Lin Yi pretended to be angry. All right, since Brother Ling has put it this way, then I'll accept it. However, I'll say this first. You must accept the amount of spirit jades you paid for this condensed nascent golden pill. Otherwise, I won't be able to live with myself. Qi Wenhan nodded. Who told you that this condensed nascent golden pill was bought? Lin Yi looked at him strangely and smiled. Didn't I tell you before that I'm a real elixir refiner? I made these pills myself. Lin Yi looked at him strangely and smiled. Chapter 4655. Hee, to be honest, if it wasn't for the sudden appearance of the West Mountain Elder, I was planning on making a batch of pills specifically for the escort agency. Unfortunately, things happened so suddenly that I had no other choice. This time, I can help you make up for it, so don't dawdle. This gathering infant golden pill was originally prepared for you, so quickly accept it, Lin Yi said with a smile. Qi Wenhan did not have much else to say, so he nodded and said, If that's the case, then I won't stand on ceremony with you, Brother Ling. You should have done this a long time ago. Lin Yi smiled. In his eyes, Qi Wenhan, senior brother Ku Bai, and the others were all on his side. He was never stingy with his own people, and if the gathering infant golden pill could help him achieve good things, that would be for the best. Speaking of which, I am ashamed. Ever since we met, Brother Ling has always been the one who has helped me. Even if I sell my life to you, it won't be enough. It looks like I can only work like a horse for you, Qi Wenhan said half-jokingly. Why are you working like a horse for me instead of being the young master of an escort agency? Brother Qi, don't forget that I own 30% of the agency's shares. Helping you is helping myself. This is called a long-term investment, not a favor. Lin Yi laughed disapprovingly. Hee, if all the businessmen in the world were to invest like you, Brother Ling, they would probably be starving, unable to recoup their investment for the rest of their lives. Qi Wenhan smiled and shook his head, then looked at the gathering infant golden pill in his hand and said excitedly, To be honest, Brother Ling, this gathering infant golden pill of yours is really timely. My father and I have been asking around for the gathering infant golden pill for half a year. Unfortunately, there is no stock in the South Continent. You have solved my urgent problem. All right, hurry up and condense your nascent soul, then get the daughter of the ship king. I am waiting to attend your wedding, Lin Yi said with a smile. Don't worry, Brother Ling, what you said just now has enlightened me. Since I have met her, I must hold on to her tightly. I will not let myself regret it for the rest of my life. Qi Wenhan's eyes suddenly became passionate again. Compared to before, he was obviously more determined. This is the brother Qi I know. Lin Yi nodded his head in appreciation. He chuckled and said, "Don't forget to send me an invitation when the time comes. No matter how far it is, I will still rush over. I really want to see how beautiful the daughter of a shipping king is to be able to charm you." This. Qi Wenhan lowered his head and rubbed his hands together, saying somewhat embarrassedly, "Actually, she has also come this time. You'll be able to see him in 2 days." "What? I don't see anything. Was he sitting with you just now?" Linny blinked. Previously, he had only been paying attention to Qi Wenhan and hadn't paid attention to the people around him. "Well, the main reason I came here this time is to have more opportunities to get in touch with her. She has mixed in with the Southern Continent's diplomatic corps, but this is a secret visit. Very few people know her identity." Qi Wenhan smiled bitterly. "Oh, then I really have to find a chance to get to know her." Linny laughed and looked at Qi Wenhan's embarrassed look. He said playfully, "So, Brother Qi, you're quite close to her. You've even gotten together. Not bad, not bad." Brother Ling, you've misunderstood. I haven't even gotten close to her yet. The main reason we're together this time is because the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency is cooperating with her family's treasure ship transportation company." Qi Wenhan suddenly blushed again. "What kind of cooperation?" Lin Yi asked in surprise. This time for the birthday party, the Southern Continent Escort Agency Alliance has a large batch of goods to be delivered to the West Island. This used to be the business of the Four Seas Escort Agency, but now it has fallen into the hands of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency. Not only the West Island, but also the long-distance escort business related to other Heaven Stage islands. From now on, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency will be responsible for it, Qi Wenhan explained. "This is not bad. We can take over these businesses. The escort agency will definitely be reborn." Lin Yi's eyes lit up as he said this. The escort agencies that were limited to the waters of the Southern Continent and the escort agencies that were spread across the 5 Heaven Stage islands were on 2 completely different levels. Once the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency could successfully take over these long-distance voyages, its strength would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. The other escort agencies that were limited to the waters of the Southern Continent would definitely not be able to compete with them. Yes, my father and I both feel that these businesses are of the utmost importance, and we definitely can't make any mistakes. However, we don't have a treasure ship of our own, and it's impossible for us to travel so far by relying on a normal ship. That's why we decided to cooperate with the Treasure Ship Transportation Company. It's also because of this that I met her." A silly smile suddenly appeared on Qi Wenhan's face. Lin Yi couldn't help but chuckle. The Qi Wenhan of the past wasn't exactly a playboy, but he'd definitely been an elegant young master. Now, he'd turned into a silly, infatuated man because of a woman. The word love was truly mysterious. "That's enough. Brother Qi, you can stop being so infatuated. I'm getting goosebumps." Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. "Same here. Brother Ling, aren't you also entangled in love?" "We're truly brothers," Qi Wenhan said with a laugh. "I'm not as infatuated as you are." Lin Yi pursed his lips and asked, "By the way, what's the situation in the Southern Continent recently? Has the Spirit Beast clan made any moves?" "They've already begun to take action. The waters and city docks closest to the southern island have already been taken over by the experts of the Spirit Beast clan. Although they've only said that they're maintaining order and haven't directly started collecting fees, everyone knows that it's only a matter of time." Speaking of this, Qi Wenhan's expression suddenly became serious. As expected, they can't hold back anymore. Lin Yi nodded. To be honest, the fact that the Spirit Beast clan had taken so long to take action was already very unexpected. With the Vermilion Bird's wild ambition, it was inevitable that they would encroach on the waters of the Southern Continent. No one could stop them unless they started a war with the Spirit Beast clan. This is all thanks to Brother Ling's reminder. Otherwise, our Heaven's Equal Escort Agency would have suffered a great loss. Do you know that the Divine Wind Escort Agency has already fallen apart? Just because one of their fleets refused to be disciplined, they were killed on the spot by the experts of the Spirit Beast clan. After that, every time the Divine Wind Escort Agency escorted a convoy, their ships would be destroyed and their people would die. Now, we can't hold on any longer. This is the consequence of provoking the Spirit Beast clan. If we hadn't made preparations in advance, I'm afraid that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency would have been the ones targeted, Chi Wenhan said with lingering fear. Chapter 4656. Holy Wind Escort Agency's foundation was much deeper than that of Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. He didn't expect to be the first unlucky one. He couldn't help but ask, since the Spirit Beast clan has taken action, what's the reaction of the surrounding forces? They're angry, but they don't dare to say anything. At least as far as the sea area of South State is concerned, all of them are not enough to satisfy the Spirit Beast clan. Of course, they don't even dare to fart. Chi Wenhan smiled bitterly and said after a pause, "It's okay now, but I'm afraid that the Spirit Beast clan will become more aggressive in the future. So, I actually have another mission this time, which is to communicate with the higher-ups of West Island and see what West Island's attitude is about this. After that, other forces will try their best to get in touch with them. If human forces can unite to contain the Spirit Beast clan together, it will be great." The image of Azure Dragon flashed through Lin Yi's mind, especially the attitude he showed during the birthday banquet and the words he said to him. He'd been confused before, but now he understood a little. Azure Dragon's intentions were probably the same as Chi Wenhan's. They were both here for the same thing, it was just that they were on different sides. The Spirit Beast clan was originally isolated from the world. Now it took the first step under the command of Vermilion Bird, but Vermilion Bird wasn't stupid enough to think that he could be the enemy of the whole world. Every time the Spirit Beast clan took a step forward, they had to carefully observe the reaction of human forces. If they were besieged by human forces before they had enough strength, even the Spirit Beast clan couldn't afford it. In this case, the new Azure Dragon promoted by Vermilion Bird became the best choice to deal with human forces. This time he came to West Island to attend the birthday party. He didn't just want to be friendly, but also had the same idea as Chi Wenhan. He wanted to take the opportunity to find out the views of the higher-ups of West Island on the situation of South State. Not only West Island, but also the other Heaven Stage Islands, including North Island, were also the people Azure Dragon had to deal with. Thinking of this, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. No wonder Azure Dragon talked to him specially. However, Lin Yi still ignored one thing. Azure Dragon did shoulder the mission of dealing with human forces, and he did plan to find a chance to visit the North Island. But this couldn't be a reason for Azure Dragon to talk to him, at least this reason was far from sufficient. No matter what, Lin Yi was just a special envoy from the North Island. In terms of level, he was far from being comparable to the Azure Dragon, a top-notch elder of the Spirit Beast clan. If the Azure Dragon really wanted to visit the North Island, why would he look for him? Wouldn't it be better to find Lan Tiefu? North Island, West Island, and Nanzhou. Even Zhongdao was included. Even Lin Yi himself didn't realize that he had a lot of intersection with these places. Although he was a small figure, if he really played a role, he would be a key fulcrum that could leverage the entire South Continent. The Azure Dragon saw this, which was why the scene at the birthday banquet happened. Otherwise, a mere Lin Yi would not even be qualified to enter his eyes, let alone take the initiative to talk to him. The Spirit Beast clan is such a behemoth that the forces in the South Continent's sea can't contend with. To be honest, the final outcome of the South Continent's sea has nothing to do with the local forces. It depends on whether the Spirit Beast clan and the human forces in the other Heaven Stage Islands will eventually reach some kind of tacit understanding or compromise. The key depends on the attitude of these big shots, Lin Yi said thoughtfully. Yes, I think so too. That's why I have to find a way to contact the higher-ups of these islands. I don't expect any kind of help from them. At least I have to find out their attitude first, so that I can always be prepared in advance. Chi Wenhan nodded. Yes. That's all I can do for the time being. If there are any changes in the future, remember to inform me at any time. I don't dare to say anything else, but I have some connections in the Heaven Stage Islands. Maybe they can help, Lin Yi said after thinking for a while. Okay, I'll keep it in mind, Chi Wenhan said with great joy. After these words, The two talked for a while. They didn't talk too late. At this time, Qi Wenhan took the gathering nascent soul golden elixir and couldn't wait to go back and prepare for the breakthrough. As for Lin, he also needed to adjust his state, consolidate his strength, and prepare for the upcoming West Island trial test. Ning Xuefei's short letter had completely dispelled the doubts in Lin Yi's heart. This time, the West Island trial test was related to Ning Xuefei's lifelong happiness, so there was absolutely no room for failure. Although time was tight and there were only 2 days left, Lin Yi still decided to have a good closed-door training. He didn't expect to have any amazing breakthrough, but at least he wanted to control his strength more skillfully. Lin Yi had a vague hunch that this time, the West Island trial test would not be so easy, and he was afraid that there would be a fierce battle. While Lin Yi was in closed-door training, on the other side, Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming, who also lived in the emissary's mansion, unexpectedly had an uninvited guest. A middle-aged man with a white face and no beard knocked on their door. At first glance, this man looked sloppy and ordinary, and he was the kind of person who would never be found in a crowd of people. If one had to say what characteristics he had, it could only be said that this man's eyes were small and focused, which made people know at first glance that he was a shrewd businessman. "I'm Dong Fangua, the shopkeeper of the West Island branch of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Nice to meet you, Special Envoy Su." As soon as this man saw Su Lingchong, he gave him a big salute, which was the standard etiquette for superiors and subordinates, and his posture was extremely low. "Okay, come in." Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming looked at each other, and then they invited him into the room. Most people in the Central Chamber of Commerce didn't know the existence of the Central Chamber of Commerce, but at the level of the shopkeeper of the branch, he must be an internal member of the Central, just like Si Haishao in the North Island. "What can I do for you?" Su Lingchong continued to look at Dong Fangua, who came uninvited. He didn't receive any order or news in advance, so he was a little confused about the visit of the shopkeeper of the West Island branch. Did he simply come to pay his respects after hearing the news? This was not impossible. Although the position of the shopkeeper of the branch seemed to be glorious, his status in the Central was far less than that of Su Lingchong, the special emissary of the North Island. It was normal for him to find an opportunity to show his goodwill. "Special Emissary Su, I received a secret order from the top yesterday, asking me to cooperate with you and be your logistical support," Dong Fangua said respectfully. "Logistical support?" Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming's eyes lit up at the same time, and then they asked, "What can you support? Elixirs or magic weapons?" "Ha, you two must be joking. Although our Central Chamber of Commerce is also involved in these things, they are not our main products, and they may not be effective in a short time." Dong Fangua paused and said with a mysterious smile, "What I brought this time are specially supplied high-tech materials, which should be of some use." Chapter 4657. "Oh, take it out and have a look." Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming couldn't help but be interested. Dong Fangua smiled slightly and clapped her hands gently. 2 servants came in from outside the door. They were carrying a big box that was half the height of a person, and they seemed to be struggling. Kang Mingming couldn't wait to step forward and open the box. After seeing what was inside, he suddenly gasped, "Fuck! Isn't this a laser cannon? Oh my god, long di-dong and an intelligent armor?" These 2 things were extremely rare even in the secular world. Ordinary people simply couldn't get their hands on them, let alone on this heavenly island. The center was really awesome. They could even get their hands on these 2 things. These 2 things should be able to help you. I wish Brother Kong success in advance. Dong Fangua smiled and complimented. "Ah, that's for sure. With this equipment, I don't need to be afraid." Kang Mingming couldn't help but be overjoyed. If he wasn't strong enough, he could make up for it with equipment. With the laser cannon and the intelligent armor, even if he faced Lin Yi head-on, he wouldn't be afraid. Seeing that Kang Mingming was so excited, Su Lingchong was puzzled. He looked up and down at the laser cannon and the intelligent armor and said strangely, "What? Is this thing really that good?" As a member of the center, of course, he had seen many technological products in the secular world. However, the impression that those things gave him was nothing more than novelty. It was quite convenient to use, but it was absolutely nonsense to say that it was very powerful, especially these so-called high-tech weapons. In a word, they were flashy but impractical. It sounded awesome, but that was limited to ordinary people. It would be difficult to use it to deal with masters in the foundation establishment stage, let alone the nascent soul stage, which was far above the foundation establishment stage. What could these two things do in the West Island trial test? Young Master Su, don't underestimate these high-tech weapons in the secular world, especially this laser cannon and intelligent armor. Their power and effect are absolutely unimaginable unless you see them with your own eyes. Kong Mingming's eyes lit up as he looked at the two pieces of equipment. They were just delivered at this critical moment. They were simply tailor-made for him. It can't be an exaggeration, right? Su Lingchong was still skeptical. Hee, young Master Su, you don't know. Don't look at how many people in the secular world say that the Great Circle of the Heaven rank is an atomic bomb. At most, its destructive power and deterrence were more shocking. This laser cannon is a rare high-tech weapon in the secular world. Its power is far beyond that of ordinary technological weapons. I don't think even a profound ascending stage master would be able to penetrate it, let alone a mere nascent soul stage Lin Yi. Kong Mingming said confidently. Really? Su Lingchong's eyelids twitched. Even a profound ascending stage expert could be penetrated with one shot. Wouldn't that be a super-killing weapon? If that was the case, then the value of this thing would be huge. The higher-ups really put in a lot of effort for this West Island trial. It's absolutely true. Young Master Su, don't be fooled by the fact that the most powerful technological weapon in the secular world is the atomic bomb. That thing is only powerful enough to kill ordinary people. Ordinary cultivators might not be able to withstand it, but if it's used against experts of the original infant stage, it's probably useless. But this laser cannon is different. Kong Mingming licked his lips and said excitedly, the laser cannon is not a large-scale destructive weapon like the atomic bomb. Instead, it concentrates all its power in one place. The terrible penetration and lethality of that point-to-point is unimaginable. Nascent soul stage can't bear it, and profound ascending stage probably can't bear it either. I even suspect that no cultivator in the world can bear it. That's impossible. The real top masters are not what you can imagine at all. No matter how powerful a technological weapon is, it's just a pile of scrap iron in front of them. Otherwise, they would be invincible in the secular world. Su Lingchong curled his lips. He had never been interested in the so-called technology of the secular world. To be precise, he looked down on the secular world at all. Moreover, his understanding of masters was far from that of a low-level dabbler like Kong Mingming. No matter how strong a cultivator was, he couldn't block this little laser cannon? Bullshit. Yes, young Master Su is right. But the lethality of the laser cannon really can't be underestimated. I can guarantee that it's no problem to deal with Lin Yi. Kong Mingming smiled apologetically. What you said is indeed a bit interesting, but what is the land atomic bomb? What is that? Su Lingchong suddenly asked. It's one of the most powerful technological weapons in the secular world. I can't explain it in a few words. To put it simply, if West Island is given a heavyweight atomic bomb, then West Island will probably disappear from the map of Heaven Stage Island. Kong Mingming thought about it and explained. So awesome. Su Lingchong was shocked. He said in disbelief, West Island has all kinds of super protective formations. Once they are all activated, even the giants in the mountain opening period can't do anything about it. Are you kidding me? I'm just making an example. If West Island doesn't have a protective array, and all the people there are ordinary people, even if they don't sink, they will be useless from then on. That's why this thing has such a terrible deterrent power in the secular world, Kong Mingming explained. Is that so? That's not simple. I didn't expect the secular world to be so capable. They can even create such a thing. Su Lingchong nodded. Brother Kong seems to know a lot about these things. This is an eye-opener for me, Dong Fonghua, who was beside him, said with a smile. Oh, he came from the secular world. It would be strange if he didn't know this. Su Lingchong curled his lips. Oh. No wonder Brother Kong is so familiar with laser cannons and intelligent armor. Then Brother Kong, you must know more than me. I won't introduce more, lest I show off in front of an expert. To be honest, I don't really understand this thing. Luckily, I met Brother Kong, such an understanding person. Dong Fangwa let out a sigh of relief. No problem. Don't I have an instruction manual? Anyway, there's still some time before the trial starts. I just need to study it a little. Leave it to me. Kong Ming Ming smiled proudly, and then he couldn't wait to fiddle with it. This was his capital and reliance to deal with Lin Yi. This time, whether he could get Ning Xuefei or not, depended on whether this thing was powerful enough. 2 days passed in a flash. In these 2 days, although masters from various Heaven Stage islands gathered in West Island, there weren't as many strange faces on the streets as expected. Because most people were adjusting their state, making the final preparations for the trial of West Island that was about to start, are 1052. Chapter 4658. Early in the morning, people from all walks of life gathered in the square of the Island Master's temporary imperial residence. Although there was no special division, everyone still consciously divided themselves into several areas, just like during the birthday banquet. The cultivators from each area gathered in one area. When Lin Yi arrived at the square accompanied by Han Jingjing and Shanghai Lena, the registration for this West Island trial had officially begun. The format was very simple. Everyone only needed to sign their names on the trial list. As long as they did not exceed the strength requirement of the Yuanying stage, there was almost no threshold. This could be said to be the most relaxed conditions in the West Island trial. Of course, if you want to participate in the trial, there was still a minimum strength limit, at least a master of the Gold Core stage. Otherwise, even if you go to the ancient battlefield ruins, you will only die, which was meaningless. Lin Yi glanced at the host platform. To his disappointment, he did not see the figure of Ning Xuefei, and Ning Shangling, the island lord of West Island, did not appear. The person who presided over this trial was the deputy island lord, Yan Xinlan. Only experts below the nascent soul stage can participate in the trial. It's useless to hide your strength and muddle your way through. That's because we're not the ones to judge you. Instead, you have to go through a special teleportation array. This array is very peculiar. Only experts below the nascent soul stage can be teleported through. If you're a guest with a cultivation above that, then you don't have to waste your efforts in order to avoid looking for trouble. Yan Xinlan looked at the bustling crowd of people signing up and said indifferently. After she said this, there were indeed a few people in the crowd who retreated awkwardly. They did not necessarily want to fight for Ning Xuefei. It was estimated that they simply wanted to go to the ancient battlefield ruins. After all, there were not only all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, but if they were lucky, they could also get the ancient inheritance. Even the masters of the profound ascending stage would be jealous. Lin Yi smiled slightly when he saw this. In front of great benefits, there were really all kinds of people. After turning to Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner and saying something, he squeezed into the crowd to sign up. Brother Ling. Lin Yi was signing. Suddenly someone behind him patted his shoulder. It was Qi Wenhan. You came. Lin Yi turned around and greeted Qi Wenhan. Only then did he notice that there was a girl standing beside Qi Wenhan. Looking at Qi Wenhan's somewhat awkward expression, he immediately understood that this girl should be this guy's sweetheart, the daughter of the ship king. Lin Yi's interest was immediately piqued. He couldn't help but take another look at this woman. He discovered that this woman was dressed very ordinarily and was not conspicuous at all in the crowd. Even her appearance could only be said to be ordinary. Overall, she gave people the feeling that she was a very ordinary woman. There was nothing special about her. Compared to Shangguan Laner, Ning Xuefei, and Han Jingjing, there was simply no comparison at all. However, Lin Yi soon discovered something strange. Although the other party's flaw was very small, it still couldn't escape his eyes. The other party's appearance was disguised. Most people would have a hard time noticing this, but Lin Yi didn't just judge people by their appearance. He paid more attention to the other party's temperament. In this day and age, it was very easy to disguise one's appearance, but it was very difficult to change one's temperament. At least, There was a clear difference between the temperament of the woman in front of him and her ordinary appearance. Based on this point, it could be concluded that the other party must have changed her appearance. However, this was not surprising. Female cultivators were in much more danger than male cultivators, not to mention that she was the daughter of the ship king. This time, it was a secret mission. Disguising was a very normal method. "Hello, my name is Lin. I'm Brother Chi's friend." Lin looked mischievously at Chi Wonhan and immediately introduced himself. "My name is Xia Luoluo. You're very famous in our South Continent Sea. Wonhan always said that you two are good brothers. Today, I finally meet you in person." The woman smiled naturally and nodded. Hee, I've embarrassed myself in front of Miss Xia." Lin raised his eyebrows at Chi Wonhan. Previously, when he heard how self-abased Chi Wonhan was, he thought that this daughter of the ship king was high up and unapproachable. Now that the relationship between the two of them was so close, it seemed that he would be able to drink a wedding wine soon. Only now did Lin remember to look at Chi Wonhan again. He found that this guy's temperament had been reborn. As expected, he had successfully condensed his nascent soul and became a true early-stage nascent soul master. No wonder his whole person had become so much more confident. Ahem, speaking of which, Brother Ling, are you signing up alone this time? Chi Wonhan was embarrassed by Lin Yi's stare. He was afraid that the other would say something he shouldn't. After all, the relationship between him and Xia Luoluo had not been made clear yet, so he could only quickly change the topic. "Yeah, I'm not a couple like you. Looking at your posture, you should also sign up, right?" Lin said with a playful smile. Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing wanted to accompany him, but the trial in West Island was full of danger. He couldn't guarantee the safety of the two women, so to be safe, he persuaded them to stay. After all, this was not a trip for fun. For Ning Xuefei's lifelong happiness, there must be no mistakes. Chi Wonhan and Xia Luoluo looked at each other, and after their eyes met, they quickly separated. Xia Luoluo blushed and lowered her head, while Chi Wonhan hurriedly said, "We are participating for the treasures of heaven and earth, not to compete with Brother Ling for the princess of West Island. Don't get me wrong. I know, that's why I said you two are a couple, right?" As soon as Lin Yi's voice fell, Chi Wonhan and Xia Luoluo's faces suddenly became redder, and they immediately lowered their heads and stopped talking. From time to time, they secretly glanced at each other, and as soon as their eyes met, they immediately separated. Seeing this, Lin couldn't help but be amused. He deliberately said this to achieve this effect. When the relationship between a man and a woman reached a certain level, there would always be this layer of window paper. He was pushing the boat with the current, in case Chi Wonhan would think too much and dawdle for too long. While speaking, Lin had written his name on the registration list. At the same time, he roughly glanced at the list, and as a result, he found the names of two old acquaintances on it, Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming. "Oh, they are really haunting me." Lin smiled coldly. He had already noticed that during the welcoming banquet, these two guys seemed to deliberately want to discredit him, especially to destroy the relationship between him and Ning Xuefei. He didn't know what they were planning. Did they really want to become Ning Xuefei's husband? One was a man who was not a man, and the other was just a villain who couldn't do anything but spoiled things. Did these two guys want to compete for Ning Xuefei? Are you kidding me? Chapter 4659. As soon as she finished speaking, the whole audience suddenly quieted down. Everyone's eyes automatically focused on Yan Xinlan. Since it was about their lives, they didn't dare to take it lightly. N is an element of. The rule of this West Island trial is that there are no rules. The number of participants is unlimited, and the trial time is unlimited. It can be early or late. It's all up to you. Yan Xinlan said. The audience couldn't help but burst into an uproar. At the level of Yuaning stage, everyone present had participated in countless trials, big and small. Each trial must have its own rules. Some were strange, some were complicated, but it was the first time they encountered a trial without rules like what Yan Xinlan said. After hearing this, the quick-witted cultivators were already eager to have a try. One by one, they began to make all kinds of calculations. Since there were no rules, there was a lot of room for manipulation. If they didn't make a good plan, not only would they not be able to get the first place, they might even suffer a big loss. However, a small number of people, including Lin Yi, showed a cautious expression. No rules sounded very free, but it also showed the degree of danger of this trial. The legendary ancient battlefield ruins were likely to be so dangerous that no one was allowed to add rules. Survival was the only existence there. Seeing everyone's expression, Yen Xinlan continued, "In this West Island trial, you will be sent there through a special transmission array. As for the way back, you will also have to use the transmission array over there. As long as you attack the transmission array eye with your true chi, you can activate the array. But I have to remind you that you'd better act according to your strength, otherwise you won't be able to come back." "Won't come back? What do you mean?" Everyone was shocked. The reason is very simple. The longer the time is delayed, the more true chi is needed to activate the transmission array. We have tested it before. Even a peak nascent soul master can't do it. Even a master at the peak of Yuaning stage can only delay for a month, because that will consume all his true chi. If the time is delayed for a longer time, the consequences can be imagined. Yen Xinlan said lightly. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Although there were no rules of the trial, this condition had naturally limited the trial time, which was at most 1 month. Because the peak of Yuaning stage was the highest strength to participate in the West Island trial, those with weaker strength would have a much shorter time. Vice Island Master Yen, there seems to be a loophole in your words. Since we can activate the teleportation as long as we input enough true chi, we just need to work together, right? Someone in the crowd suddenly asked. That's a beautiful thought. Unfortunately, it won't work because only one person can enter the teleportation formation at a time. If you want to activate the teleportation formation, you'll have to inject your true chi from the inside and ask someone else to help you from the outside. Or perhaps you'll have to wait for someone else to activate the teleportation formation. Both of these are impossible. Therefore, I hope that everyone won't be greedy. Otherwise, if time passes and you can't come out, then you really won't be able to come out. Yen Xinlan glanced at everyone and said. After he said that, the whole place fell silent. All of them looked uncertain. Everyone's time limit varied from person to person. If they didn't grasp the time well, it would be troublesome. If they came out too early, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. But if it was too late and he simply couldn't come out, then that would be even worse. It was truly a dilemma. Dare I ask Vice Island Master Yen? Since there were no rules in this trial, how would they determine who would win? It's about who could be the husband of the princess. There must be a clear standard, right? Otherwise, we won't be able to convince everyone. Someone suddenly asked loudly. As soon as he said that, all the people present suddenly became interested. Many of them had the same idea as Kong Ming, that was, they wanted to take advantage of this rare opportunity to reach the top in a single bound. It's very simple. Whoever gets the most treasures of heaven and earth in the trial will be the final winner. Yen Xinlan's answer was concise and comprehensive. Seeing everyone's different expressions, she added, "Of course, the treasures of heaven and earth you get are all yours. West Island doesn't want any of them, so you don't have to hide them. Every one of them has a corresponding value, which will be converted into spiritual jades according to the average price of the major chambers of commerce." After getting this answer, everyone stopped talking. Although the treasures of heaven and earth couldn't directly prove anything, in this dangerous trial of West Island, they could indirectly show a person's strength and ability, even including things like chance and luck. It was reasonable to use this to measure. Well, since everyone has no questions, please line up and get ready to start the transmission, Yen Xinlan announced immediately. Under the guidance of the disciple of West Island, everyone lined up cooperatively and was ready to go to the transmission formation. At this time, there was a sudden uproar behind the line. Lin Yi heard the sound and looked over, and he was instantly stunned. At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on one person, which was Kong Ming. However, at this time, he was already fully armed. Not only was he wearing an AI armor, but he was also carrying a laser cannon on his shoulder. He was arrogant and awe-inspiring, just like Megatron from the Transformers movies. In contrast, Su Lingchong, who was walking beside him, was ignored by everyone at all. What's this? Why does it look so fierce? Everyone looked at each other. They were all natives of Heaven Stage Island. Of course, they didn't know about this kind of super high-tech stuff. They all thought it was some kind of magic weapon. After all, the trial of West Island had never prohibited the use of weapons. At this moment, almost everyone had a puzzled expression on their faces. Although they didn't know what it was, they knew that it wasn't something to be trifled with just by looking at its awesome appearance. They couldn't help but feel a bit of fear in their hearts. These were all competitors that they had to face next. In contrast, the expressions of Lin Yi and Han Jingjing were a little subtle. Others didn't know it was awesome, but the two of them knew what it was. Needless to say, Han Jingjing, the technological geek, even Lin Yi was no stranger to these two things. After all, he was a killer. Such weapons were not only equipment that he might use in the mission, but also threats that he had to be extremely cautious and careful to deal with. How to deal with high-tech weapons was one of his key subjects. Looking at Kang Mingming's swagger, especially his intelligent armor and laser cannon, Lin Yi was almost stunned. Although the Central Chamber of Commerce had already set off a wave of technology on Heaven Stage Island, he never dreamed that he would encounter such a situation in the trial of West Island. A high-level cultivator against a super high-tech weapon. What kind of dislocation was this? Chapter 4660. He suggested, why don't we bring Jing Jing along for this trial? Although she won't be able to help in a fight, if this thing is real, I should be able to find a way to deal with it. Yes, I'll go too. Shanghai Laner was also eager to give it a try. I've never seen such a novel thing before. I must take a good look at it. When I get back, I'll get Grandpa to buy one too. It looks so fun. No! Lin Yi rejected without hesitation. Han Jingjing was still reliable, but Shanghai Laner was simply a troublemaker. She did not understand the situation at all, so he shook his head firmly. Both of you can't go. It's too dangerous. With your strength, you won't even have the ability to protect yourselves. If something happens, I won't be able to do anything. With Lin Yi's strength, he should be able to protect himself after entering. Even if something unexpected happened, there would always be room for maneuver. However, if Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner were to be added, there might not even be a chance to save anyone. If one of them were to die, where would Lin Yi go to cry? But Han Jingjing was still worried. The AI armor was only a defensive equipment, so it was fine. However, Kang Mingming's laser cannon was too dangerous. It looked like it had a long range and was extremely powerful. What if this guy used it to trick Lin Yi? She had always known that her big brother Lin Yi and Kang Mingming did not get along. To be precise, it was Kang Mingming who did not have good intentions. As for Lin Yi, although he knew that the laser cannon was a high-tech weapon, he had never actually come into contact with it, nor did he have any direct experience in dealing with it. Especially with this new unknown laser cannon. If they really fought, it was very likely that they would not know where to start. Even if it was just a moment of negligence or misjudgment, the consequences would be unimaginable. In this aspect, Han Jingjing could really come in handy. Although she had never come into contact with it before, as long as she saw how the laser cannon worked, she might be able to see its flaws in a very short period of time and come up with a countermeasure. At the very least, it would not let Lin Yi completely fall into a passive rhythm. There are no buts. There is no room for discussion. Both of you must stay here and wait for my return. It was rare for Lin Yi to be serious with Han Jingjing and Shangguan Lane. He would never agree to let the two women put themselves in danger for him. Seeing that Lin Yi was so determined, Han Jingjing and Shangguan Laner looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. They also knew that they might not be of any help to Lin Yi if they followed him. On the contrary, they would only be a burden. All right then. Brother Lin Yi, take this with you. If anything happens, contact Jing Jing at any time. Jing Jing can help you plan. Han Jingjing said as she suddenly took out a small thing from her pocket. What is this? Shanghai Laner curiously moved closer. When Lin Yi saw it, his eyes twitched. His expression was even more shocked than when he saw the smart armor and laser cannon. The little thing in Han Jingjing's hand was actually a mobile phone. This thing has a signal? Lin Yi couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Speaking of which, he also put a mobile phone in his jade pendant space. He used it to secretly record the scene of Yu Zhi killing his master. However, apart from taking photos and videos, it had no other use. After all, there was no signal on this heavenly island. Well, Jing Jing asked Fei Fei to specially book this from the Central Chamber of Commerce. There was no signal at first. However, Jing Jing specially modified it and set up a small base station herself. She wrote in the authentication code, so it can be used normally. However, the range is limited to the West Island because the base station's coverage is limited. Han Jingjing said in a matter-of-fact tone. She didn't know how much impact her words would have if they were heard by others. Fortunately, the people present were all natives of Heavenly Island. They didn't understand it all and were just confused. So advanced. However, Lin Yi couldn't close his mouth for a long time. Looking at Han Jingjing's careless expression, he was speechless. This kind of thing was child's play for Han Jingjing, but for others, it was simply a fantasy. At least, Lin Yi couldn't do this even if he was beaten to death. The mobile phone was just a camera in his hand. Anyway, I have nothing to do in the past 2 years in West Island, so I found something to study. At first, Fei Fei thought it was very novel. She wanted to call Jing Jing even though there was a room between them, but then she forgot about it. Han Jingjing said with a smile. You two haven't told me what this is? What do you mean by calling? Shanghai Laner was so anxious that she wanted to grab the mobile phone and take it apart to study it. Unfortunately, Han Jingjing handed it to Lin Yi first. This is a mobile phone, also a technological product of the secular world. Jing Jing will explain it to you later. Fei Fei has another one. I'll give it to you when we go back. Han Jingjing said with a smile. Oh. Shanghai Laner nodded like a curious baby, but her eyes were fixed on the mobile phone all the time. Her eyes lit up from time to time. Under the subtle influence of Lin Yi, this girl had been unable to extricate herself from the things of the secular world. Well, in this case, I'll take it with me. It's convenient for me to contact you at any time. Maybe there will really be a time when I ask you for help, Jing Jing. Lin Yi nodded and took the mobile phone. In terms of dealing with high-tech weapons, Han Jingjing was more than enough to be an advisor. However, he was a little worried about whether it could still be used normally when he arrived at the ruins of the primeval battlefield. After all, according to Han Jingjing, although the small base station she set up covered West Island, it was very hard to say whether it could cover the ruins of the primeval battlefield. He didn't know how far that place was from West Island, and it was very likely that there would be no signal there. Of course, it was better to take it with him than not. If there was also a signal there, it would be a gain. Anyway, there would be no loss. While Lin Yi and Han Jingjing were talking, on the other side, Kang Mingming had already walked over under the gaze of all the people present. It seemed that he was enjoying the feeling of being the center of attention. To be honest, in front of a weirdo like Lin Yi, Kang Ming had always been a clown. He really had no chance to be in the limelight. This time, it was rare for him to show his face with the help of the intelligent armor and the laser cannon, which was really unprecedented. Isn't this student Lin Yi? What, am I seeing things or am I confused? Why do I see a mobile phone? Do you think this is the secular world? You can still make phone calls? When Kang Mingming saw the mobile phone in Lin Yi's hand, he suddenly laughed and felt very superior. Chapter 4661. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi glanced at him indifferently and replied seriously, yes. Lin Yi, you're really good. This is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life. Why don't you just change your profession and become a comedian? Kang Mingming laughed so hard that he almost rolled on the ground. But is it funny? Lin Yi looked at him playfully, a smile on his face. Don't make fun of me yet. Get yourself a mirror and look at yourself. What the hell are you wearing? Are you going to change your career to become Ultraman or something? Humph, if I'm Ultraman, then who's the monster? Student Lin Yi, do you want to have a try? Kang Mingming snorted and then stared at Lin Yi maliciously and said, Hey, let me be frank. You'd better not mess with me after we go in. For the sake of the fact that we're all disciples of the 3 pavilions in the North Island, I don't want to bear the infamy of killing a fellow disciple. But if you don't know what's going on, Humph, it was rare for him to get such awesome super weapons as smart armor and laser cannon. Kong Ming Ming really wanted to kill Lin. After all, this opportunity was hard to come by. But when he thought of the order from his superior, he had to give up. After witnessing the horror of the center, he would never dare to go against the will of the mysterious man. No matter how awesome the weapons in his hands were, Kong Ming Ming would never dare to do that. The weapons were given by the mysterious man. If he really wanted to do that, the mysterious man didn't even need to do anything. Maybe he could just detonate himself by remote control. At that time, he wouldn't even know how he died. But then again, although the mysterious man had warned them not to mess with Lin Yi, both Su Lingchong and Kong Ming Ming understood that the superior didn't want to kill Lin Yi for the time being. But now the task was to prevent Lin Yi from becoming Ning Xuefei's husband. So it was natural to target this guy in the trial. Since he couldn't kill it, he could at least cripple it, right? He had suffered so many losses at the hands of Lin. No matter what, he had to collect the interest this time. Listening to the sharp dialogue between Lin Yi and Kong Ming Ming, although the others could see that the atmosphere was tense, they really could not understand it. All of them had baffled expressions on their faces. It would be strange if the natives of the Heaven Stage Island like them could understand what these two were talking about. He had no idea what he was talking about. Cell phone? Ultraman? What the hell was that? Looking at Kong Ming Ming's proud expression, Lin Yi couldn't help but smirk. Smart armor and laser cannons were indeed not to be underestimated, especially the latter, which was simply a killer weapon. However, wasn't this guy too naive to think that he could deal with him just like that? Did they really think that high-level cultivators were useless? A normal original infant stage cultivator was already very scary. It was still unknown whether or not they could be killed by the laser cannons. Not to mention Lin Yi, who was far above a normal original infant stage cultivator. It seemed that Kong Ming Ming really didn't have a good memory. He had suffered so many losses in the past, he was really a rare weirdo. Lin Yi smiled. He was too lazy to waste his breath on Kong Ming Ming. If he had the time, he might as well talk to Han Jingjing and Shangguan Lane. He didn't have the habit of wasting his breath on an idiot. However, what surprised Lin Yi was that suddenly, a woman's voice floated over. What is Ultraman? There was actually someone who took the initiative to talk to him? Lin Yi was stunned. He turned his head and looked towards the direction of the voice. A woman wearing a veil was slowly approaching him. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, her figure was extremely exquisite. But her figure was extremely exquisite. Even the wide robe couldn't hide the graceful ups and downs, which made people couldn't help but feel a sense of pity. Not only Lin. At this time, everyone present was looking at the woman who suddenly spoke, especially the men present. They couldn't help but swallow their saliva, and their eyes were hot. Shangguan Laner and Han Jingjing were both stunning. They were the kind of stunners that people couldn't bear to desecrate. Ordinary women couldn't be compared with them at all. They would only be dwarfed. Only the princess of West Island, Ning Xuefei, could share the limelight with them. Of course, in terms of beauty, Ning Shangling, the owner of West Island, was not inferior to them. It was just that the power aura of this super big shot was too dazzling. Normal people wouldn't think about her beauty. However, the woman who appeared this time, although she didn't show her face, in terms of figure alone, she was already as stunning as Shangguan Lane. Even because she was wearing a veil, she was more attractive than Shangguan Laner and the others. For men, the unknown was always full of mystery and imagination, which made people unable to stop. Hi, beauty. I'm Kong Ming Ming. This is my divine armor. It's very powerful. How about we form a team after we go in? I'll take you with me. I promise you'll come back with a full load. Kong Ming Ming's eyes were shining and his saliva was flowing. He couldn't hide his perverted look. Although there were such stunning beauties in front of him, he didn't dare to touch Shangguan Lena. Han Jingjing was obviously Lin Yi's woman. As for Ning Xuefei, he had to wait until he won the trial. He could only look at these stunning beauties. But now a strange woman suddenly appeared, a stunner who was probably not less beautiful than the three women. How could he not go crazy? Su Lingchong, who was not far away, couldn't help but frown when he heard Kong Ming Ming's invitation. However, after taking a look at the woman, he still didn't say anything. Ever since the plan was reported to the higher-ups, although Su Lingchong was still the person in charge, the actual leader had become Kang Xiaoming. So, Kang Xiaoming had more or less the right to speak. Moreover, it was pleasing to the eye to have such a beautiful woman with him. To any man, it was a good thing. Even an incomplete man like Su Lingchong wouldn't reject it. Oh! The woman looked at Kang Ming, who had a perverted look on his face, and nodded non-committally. She turned to look at Lin Yi and said, "Then can we form a team to do the trial together?" As soon as she said that, the crowd was in an uproar again. All the men looked at Lin Yi with envy, jealousy, and hatred. They looked like they wanted to eat him up. There were already so many stunning beauties by his side. Now, a new one actually took the initiative to talk to him. Damn it, this guy's luck with women was too good. Was there any justice in this world? How could these single dogs that no one cared about endure this? Chapter 4662. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in forming a team. Lin Yi refused directly in front of everyone, without any hesitation from the beginning to the end. Everyone was about to go crazy. It was already surprising that the woman took the initiative to talk to him. They didn't expect that Lin Yi would refuse her without saying anything. What kind of world was this? Oh! The woman couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. She continued to stare at Lin Yi for a few seconds and didn't insist too much. Perhaps she also realized that it was too inexplicable to pester Lin Yi like this. However, what made people look at each other was that although the woman didn't continue to form a team with Lin Yi, she didn't leave after being refused. Instead, she took advantage of the situation and lined up behind Lin. It really made people speechless. "Beauty, this brat has eyes but can't see the jade. He's blind. Don't bother with him. How about you think about me? My strength is not comparable to this kind of embroidered pillow. I promise you that everything you want will come true. What do you think?" Kang Ming still didn't give up and kept talking behind the woman. However, the woman didn't pay attention to him and just continued to line up behind Lin Yi in silence. She looked up and looked at Lin Yi from time to time, as if she had a deep meaning. With such a pair of eyes looking at him from behind, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. He couldn't help but be secretly vigilant. What is this girl doing? Why do I feel that she has ulterior motives? While the woman was looking at Lin Yi, Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing were also looking at her. From time to time, they whispered to each other and laughed like silver bells. They didn't mind the woman's unexpected behavior at all, they were just full of curiosity. While they were talking, the crowd had lined up in front of the transmitting formation. This was the side courtyard of the Island Master's palace, so it was heavily guarded. West Island Masters with great momentum surrounded them from all directions. Although they were all female cultivators, no one dared to act rashly because of their soaring momentum. Well, after you have verified your identity, you can line up to be teleported. Good luck to you. After Yen Xinlan finished speaking, she stepped aside, and the following matters were handed over to the two West Island deacons. One was responsible for verifying the identity, and the other was responsible for guiding the teleportation. At this time, no one dared to look for trouble, so naturally, there was no disturbance. Everyone was teleported in an orderly manner, and soon it was Lin Yi's turn. When he checked his identity and was about to enter the teleportation array, he finally knew the identity of the veiled woman behind him. This girl's name was Hui Yudi, and she was a student from Dawn Proud Yellow Stage Women's College in the East Continent. However, it was unknown whether she was the disciple of Lu Ziyu, the deputy dean. Since she was able to follow Lu Ziyu to West Island, her status must not be too low. "Little junior brother, you can do it. Fei Fei and we are all waiting for you." Seeing Lin Yi walk into the transmission array, Laner, who was stopped outside, waved her hands desperately. But when she saw Lin Yi's strange expression, she quickly realized the ambiguity in her words and blushed. Ning Xuefei was waiting for Lin Yi to become her husband, but what was she waiting for? "Brother Lin Yi, be careful. Keep in touch with Jingjing at any time." Han Jingjing made a gesture to make a phone call, which made everyone else confused. The ruins of the ancient battlefield were completely isolated from West Island, and people could only enter and exit through the transmission array. How could they keep in touch at any time? Was it a dream? Don't worry and wait for me to come back. Lin Yi smiled and waved to the two women, then turned around and entered the transmission array. After looking around a little, this transmission array was not as big as he had imagined. It was a little smaller than the ones that Lin Yi had experienced before. Each time, it could only be used by one person. In particular, the transmission array that he had seen before was powered by the spiritual qi provided by the spiritual jade, but this one had to be powered by the input of true qi. It could be said that each had its own advantages and disadvantages. Facing the stone slab in the middle, Lin Yi slowly input true qi, and the transmission array was opened. Because now the trial had just started, the transmission array did not need much true qi. After a while, the transmission array was fully activated. Lin Yi only felt that his eyes were shaking, and the surrounding scene was completely different. Ancient battlefield. Although he was still standing in the transmission array, Lin Yi had already felt a terrible aura coming to his face. All kinds of murderous aura, hostility, and ferociousness were all mixed together. Under the pressure of such a terrible aura, the weaker people could not even breathe, let alone come out to take the trial. Sure enough, this was an arena specially built for the strong. The name of the ancient battlefield was really not in vain. Walking out of the transmission array, Lin Yi looked around a little. Except for the terrible aura everywhere, he could not see anything special in this place. Because from the terrain, it was a long and narrow canyon. Except for the cliffs on both sides, he could only see the gray sky above his head. At this time, the people who had been transmitted here before did not leave, because there were two female cultivators of West Island guarding the exit of the transmission array. Looking at their aura, they were both at the peak of the nascent soul realm. It was obvious that they had been sent here in advance and seemed to have something to say. After a while, all the participants had been transmitted. When everyone appeared in the canyon, one of the female cultivators of West Island said, "We will wait here for you for a month. When you come back, we will guide you to attack the formation key here. As for other things, you can only pray for luck." After hearing this, everyone instantly understood that these two female cultivators of West Island were afraid that they would fight at the entrance of the transmission array, so they specially sent them here to supervise and maintain order. But this was understandable. The key to the trial of West Island was the transmission array. Once the transmission array failed or was destroyed, there would be no way to enter the relics of the ancient battlefield. No matter who it was, they would pay more attention to the protection. If someone with ulterior motives did this kind of thing that harmed others without benefiting himself, it would be a great loss for West Island. What was more, once in the later stage of the trial, some people were trapped here because they missed the transmission time. It was hard to guarantee that they would not have some ideas that they shouldn't have. Maybe they would attack others with the idea of dragging others down with them. In this way, the trial would be completely meaningless. How could West Island explain to other forces then? After all, these were the elites of each island. If they died here because they were not as good as others, there was nothing to say. But if this kind of reason caused everyone to die with them, no matter what, it would not be justifiable. At that time, West Island would become the target of public criticism. Chapter 4663. Everyone looked at each other, calculated silently, and then walked towards the exits on both sides of the canyon. From this moment on, they were competitors. Even if there was no big prize like the Princess of West Island, they had to be very vigilant just for the natural treasures. Killing people and robbing their treasures was a common thing, so they had to be on guard. "Brother Ling, let's go together?" Chi Wenhan took Xia Luoluo and moved closer to Lin. With his relationship with Lin Yi, this was a matter of course. "I don't care, but Brother Chi, are you sure this is the right thing to do?" Lin Yi looked at the two mischievously, and his expression was a little playful. Chi Wenhan couldn't help but blush. The trial of West Island was a rare opportunity for him and Xia Luoluo to be alone. Maybe this trial could make their relationship warm up quickly, which was his dream. If there was a third will like Lin Yi in the process, it would be hard to say. If the three of them huddled together, it would be safe, but it would be a waste of such a good opportunity. Chi Wenhan also said that Xia Luoluo, the daughter of the ship king, had no lack of pursuers. If they missed this opportunity, they might not find a good opportunity to cultivate their relationship in the future. Chi Wenhan secretly glanced at Xia Luoluo and found that she blushed, lowered her head and didn't speak. For a moment, he was a little confused about her meaning. Was she acquiescing or was she just shy? Of course, this was acquiescing. Chi Wenhan couldn't see clearly, but as a bystander, Lin Yi saw it clearly. He immediately smiled and said, "Actually, I have something important to do this time, so we'd better act separately. You two be careful, I'll leave first." Lin Yi creating opportunities for Chi Wenhan was actually just one aspect. The main reason was that he didn't want to get involved in some things. Kang Mingming got that set of technological equipment, and Lin Yi didn't believe that he would let go of this good opportunity to deal with him. "Oh, okay, Brother Ling, take care." Chi Wenhan nodded quickly. He couldn't help but feel very excited. Now he finally had a chance to be alone with his sweetheart. It was a godsend. Lin Yi chuckled, waved at the two, and turned to leave. After separating from Chi Wenhan and Chi Wenhan, Lin Yi looked around before choosing an exit. He'd only taken a few steps when he realized that someone was following him. It was that Hui Yudi from before. Lin Yi couldn't help but turn to look at her, and couldn't help but frown slightly. What does this chick want to do? Seeing Lin Yi's gaze sweep over, Hui Yudi's eyes lit up. She seemed as though she was about to speak, but someone suddenly interrupted. "Miss Hua, are you really not going to form a team with me? Why don't you reconsider? When the time comes, you can ask for heavenly materials and earthly treasures. I will definitely not treat you unfairly." Kang Xiaoming was still acting like a pervert. He didn't give up on chasing Hui Yudi. It seemed like this guy was really infatuated with her. In his dictionary, the word infatuation was written all over him. In his dictionary, picking up girls required a shameless and shameless style. Once he found a target, he had to stick to her like dog skin plaster and wouldn't let go until he reached his goal. "I'm sorry, you should find someone else." Hui Yudi's attitude this time was not as ambiguous as before. He immediately shook his head and refused. But Kang Mingming still didn't give up. He wanted to catch up and say something, but at this time, Su Lingchong suddenly coughed lightly. His eyes were obviously angry and impatient. He indeed didn't object to forming a team with a beauty like Hui Yudi, who had such a background. But Kang Mingming's attitude made him a little unhappy. The moment he came up, he was pestering a girl and wouldn't let go. Did he still want to do proper work? Under helplessness, Kang Mingming could only stop his footsteps resentfully. Although he was the main force of this operation, Su Lingchong was his boss after all. Once he made this young master Su unhappy, he could kill him with one word. He couldn't afford to offend him. Looking at the situation behind him, Lin Yi smiled indifferently and then walked forward. He couldn't be bothered to meddle in other people's business. However, at this time, Hui Yudi suddenly ran up to Lin. Ignoring the surprised eyes of others in the distance, she actually took the initiative to stretch out her hand and pull the corner of Lin Yi's clothes. Looking at Hui Yudi's pitiful look, Lin Yi suddenly frowned. He was not like Kang Mingming, who couldn't move his legs when he saw a beauty. He said unhappily, "What do you want? I don't have time to be a fool. If you want to fish for a fool, go find that guy. Don't you see that he is so proactive?" "What is a fool?" Hui Yudi couldn't help but blink her eyes strangely. She turned her head to look at the resentful Kang Mingming behind her. She looked at Lin Yi curiously and said, "Is his name a fool? But didn't he just introduce himself as Kang Mingming?" Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. For a moment, he didn't know how to explain. What was up with this strange woman? Was she really stupid, or was she pretending to be stupid? Although he didn't feel any threat at the moment, no matter how he looked at it, this woman had an ulterior motive, right? Damn it. Lin Yi, how dare you call me a fool? Believe it or not, I will blow you up with one shot. Kang Mingming, who was behind, heard this clearly. He immediately stomped his feet and scolded loudly. He even aimed the laser cannon at Lin. If it wasn't for the orders from the higher-ups, he really wanted to fire the cannon. Taking the initiative to pick up a girl and being fished for a fool were two completely different things. Any man wouldn't be happy to hear this, let alone Kang Mingming, who was bursting with confidence. Being aimed at by the laser cannon, Lin couldn't help but have a subtle feeling in his heart. He actually felt a trace of threat from Kang Ming, which he hadn't felt for a long time. It was obvious that the laser cannon couldn't be taken lightly. Although he was secretly afraid, Lin only glanced at Kang Ming with disdain on the surface. He couldn't be bothered to respond at all. Kang Ming suddenly exploded with anger. Before this, Lin ignored him arrogantly. He had no choice but to endure it. But now that he had the laser cannon and the intelligent armor in his hands, he still dared to put on such a haughty look. This bastard really didn't know how he died. Humph! Don't be complacent, kid. If it weren't for the people of West Island watching here, I would definitely destroy you with one shot. Kang Ming pointed his middle finger at him fiercely. He turned his head and said to Huiyudi, "Beauty, you'd better not look for this kid. He is a eunuch and doesn't know how to appreciate you. You'd better follow me." When Kang Ming said this, he didn't feel a sudden chill behind him. He was also bewitched. Saying that he was a eunuch in front of Su Lingchong was like scolding a monk as a bald donkey. Chapter 4664. Kang Ming curled his lips resentfully. Feeling Su Lingchong's unkind gaze behind him, he shivered and quickly turned his head to leave. His superiors spent so much effort to get him super equipment such as laser cannons and intelligent armor, not to let him come here to pick up girls. Since he couldn't pick up any beauties, he'd better hurry to collect the treasures of heaven and earth. Time was limited, and he couldn't dawdle for too long. If Lin won first place this time, his superiors might punish him. After getting rid of the annoying fly Kang Ming, Huiyudi was obviously relieved, but then Lin said in front of her, "Then I'm leaving. Don't follow me if there's nothing else, or I'll think you're up to no good." "Wait a minute," Huiyudi shouted anxiously. "What else do you want?" Lin was really impatient this time. He really couldn't understand why this woman was sticking to him. He looked at her angrily and said, "I don't have time to talk to you now. See you later." After that, Lin stepped forward directly. His intuition told him that he would definitely be in trouble if this woman stuck to him. He couldn't make any mistakes in this West Island trial test, and he didn't have time to waste with her. "You have the constitution of 5 elements?" Huiyudi suddenly asked at this time. "What?" Lin stopped in his tracks in shock, subconsciously looking around to make sure that no one was paying attention to them. He then turned his attention back to Huiyudi, re-evaluating her. This woman from the East Continent was able to see through his spirit root's attribute with just one look. Could it be that she had some sort of golden finger in this area? Although it was not a big deal to be known by others, at least it wouldn't be a substantial threat, it was still a surprise. After all, this could only be tested with very professional props. Lin had never heard of such a talent that could be known at a glance before. Although he was shocked in his heart, Lin Yi's face was still calm, and he said with an unfathomable expression, "What constitution of 5 elements? What's that?" A full attribute spirit root is also known as a constitution of the 5 elements. Huiyudi stared fixedly at Lin. It seemed that she had already confirmed this matter. Common? Lin couldn't help but curl his lips. He knew that he couldn't hide this matter from the other party. He looked Huiyudi up and down and said, "I think only the secular world calls her that. No one on Heaven Stage Island calls her a 5 elements physique." "All right, that's how it's called in the secular world." Huiyudi nodded in agreement. "You know about the secular world?" Lin was surprised to hear this. His words were just a subconscious test. He did not expect to get such a shocking result. This chick from the East Continent was getting weirder and weirder. She inexplicably came up to him and pestered him. She was also able to point out his 5 elements physique with a single sentence. She even knew that this was what the secular world called it. There were so many suspicious points mixed together. Anyone would find it strange. Lin couldn't help but wonder if this woman was sent by some organization to get close to him. "I know." Huiyudi nodded again as if it was a matter of course. Lin Yi's eyes were still full of suspicion. There were many people on Heaven Stage Island who knew about the secular world. However, there shouldn't be many who knew about the 5 elements physique. He immediately said in a deep voice, "Then you don't know what Ultraman is?" What is Kaisi? For you? I really don't know. I only heard about the secular world from others. She told me that you have a 5 elements physique. That's why I specifically asked you to confirm it. Hui Yudi's words were shocking. Who is she? Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. This matter was even more shocking than the fact that she had a golden finger that could see through the attribute of the spirit root. From what this chick said, she actually knew someone who was familiar with him. I don't know her specific identity. She is just a woman who was teleported from the secular world to the East Continent. Hui Yudi blinked and said, whether she was telling the truth or hiding something, it was unknown. What? Hearing this, even the usually calm Lin Yi couldn't help but change his expression. There were only a few people who were teleported from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island. Although there were many enemies and unrelated outsiders, since the other party was a woman, the range of targets was very small. The range of targets was already very small. Perhaps it was those who had a close relationship with him. For women to go from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island, the best place to go was the West Island, followed by the North Island and the Middle Island. And if he had to find the worst place, it would be the chaotic South Continent and the powerful and mysterious East Continent. Wang Xinyan was purely lucky to have met the Eastern Sea Divine Nun, which was why her journey was smooth sailing. Otherwise, who knew how miserable her life would be if she entered that ruthless school? Thinking about this, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little nervous. This woman from the secular world was very likely to be his confidant. It was very likely that she was his confidant. Otherwise, she wouldn't have mentioned him, let alone the 5 elements constitution. Lin Yi took a deep breath to calm himself down. What's her name? I don't know. I only know that after she was teleported to the East Continent, she was lucky enough to be accepted by Dawn Pride Girls Academy, but things didn't go so well after that. Hui Yudi said, looking at Lin Yi's changing expression. How so? Lin Yi's heart tightened. Not long after, she offended someone she shouldn't have. She was the granddaughter of one of the vice headmasters of our Morning Pride Academy. As a result, she was forcefully charged with a crime and thrown into the dungeon. After being tortured, she spilled everything she could and couldn't say. That's how I found out about you, Hui Yudi said honestly. What? Lin Yi was startled once more. He'd guessed that Dongzhou was a dangerous place, even after entering the academy. Then where's she? What does she look like? How would I know? I didn't pay attention to her at first, and after that, she was beaten beyond recognition. Of course I wouldn't know. Hui Yudi shook her head. That. Lin Yi panicked. If this woman was an outsider who had nothing to do with him, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem was that she might be his confidant. How could Lin Yi remain calm after hearing this? Fortunately, he didn't bring the spirit bird this time. Otherwise, he might have flown from the West Island to the East Continent. Chapter 4665. Lin Yi was silent for a moment. Suddenly he looked up at Hui Yudi with an unfriendly expression and said in a cold tone, So, you also participated in the torture, right? Hui Yudi shook her head. No, how did you know? Lin Yi's eyes sharpened and he asked. I overheard it when I secretly let her go. She looked so pitiful to me, but I haven't seen her since. Hui Yudi pursed her lips and said, Phew. Hearing this, Lin Yi let out a long sigh of relief. Originally, he felt that this girl was inexplicable and even a little vigilant, but now his impression of her became much better, and his eyes became much kinder. No matter who the woman in the secular world was, whether it was his confidant Chen Shi or Rock Candy, Song Lingrui, Tian Dai, or even the highest elder of Snow Valley, Lin Yi didn't want anything to happen to them, because each of them had a direct or indirect relationship with him. What's more, Hui Yudi had saved this woman's life. Just because of this kindness, Lin Yi wouldn't ignore her like before. No matter who this woman was, Lin Yi felt that he should be indebted to her. Although he said that, Lin Yi was secretly grateful, but at the same time, he was shocked. That woman offended the deputy dean's granddaughter, and as a result, she was locked up and tortured unscrupulously. It could be seen how dangerous the environment of East Continent College was. Hui Yudi dared to release this woman without permission. Wasn't that making an enemy of the deputy dean's granddaughter? Didn't the deputy dean's granddaughter make trouble for you after you secretly released her? Lin Yi looked her up and down and said. At the beginning, he had guessed that this girl's identity might not be simple. Otherwise, she wouldn't be qualified to follow him to West Island, and she wouldn't dare to oppose the deputy dean's granddaughter. First, she didn't see me release her with her own eyes. Second, I am Lu Ziyu's direct disciple. Hui Yudi said lightly. No wonder. Lin Yi suddenly came to a realization. Of these two reasons, the latter was the key. Since the other party could casually pin a crime on someone, it didn't matter whether he saw it or not. And the Lu Ziyu that the other party was talking about was the deputy dean who was representing Morning Pride Academy on this diplomatic mission to the West Island. The Heavenly Island had always adhered to the ancient customs. The status and importance of a direct disciple was not the slightest bit inferior to those descendants who were related by blood. In fact, it was often even more so. This was because not all of his descendants would be able to achieve greatness, and there were even fewer who could truly inherit his legacy. However, personal disciples were different. They were existences that were destined to inherit his legacy. They were the inheritors that the big shots had spent countless efforts and energy on. This kind of inheritance relationship was even above blood relations. The divine nun of the East Sea and Wang Xinyan were a ready-made example. As Lu Ziyu's personal disciple, it was normal for Hui Yudi to not be afraid of the vice headmaster's granddaughter. After all, if Lu Ziyu's status was higher than the vice headmaster's, the latter would have to curry favor with her instead. Then why are you looking for me? Linist. He'd asked this question 3 times already, and this was the only time he'd asked it in the friendliest tone. If it wasn't something too troublesome, Lin Yi wouldn't mind. If it wasn't something too troublesome, he would really be willing to help the other party. My current strength is at the nascent soul great perfection. I'm only 1 step away from the final breakthrough. Hui Yudi said with a serious face. And then? Lin Yi nodded. The other party did not restrain her aura. He had already noticed this a long time ago, but he did not particularly care about it. The strength of the nascent soul great perfection was considered top-notch among the people in this trial, but Lin Yi himself was a freak who could even kill a profound ascending stage expert in 1 move. Of course, he did not feel that it was a big deal. I've been stuck in this realm for more than 10 years. Hui Yudi said pitifully. More than 10 years? Lin Yi looked at her non-committally. At the nascent soul stage, it would take at least a few decades or even 100 years for a normal person to break through. This was nothing to be pitiful about, right? However, from this point, it could be seen that the other party's aptitude was indeed extraordinary. No wonder she could become the vice dean's direct disciple. If it was an ordinary cultivator who had been stuck at the nascent soul great perfection for more than 10 years, it would not be called a bottleneck at all. At most, it would be a warm-up. Yes, so senior brother Lin, can you help me? Hui Yudi's eyes were watery as she looked at Lin. She couldn't help but feel sorry for him. If Kang Xiaoming was in Lin Yi's place, he'd probably kneel down without a second thought. He'd do whatever she asked him to do without a second thought. However, Lin Yi's reaction was completely different from what he had imagined. He almost burst out laughing. He coughed a few times and said, Ahem. Since you've been stuck for more than 10 years, you must be older than me, so you don't have to call me senior brother. It's okay, I'm mentally young. I've always been cultivating and rarely come into contact with the outside world. Hui Yudi shook her head indifferently. It seemed that she really didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Lin Yi couldn't help but look sideways. In this short period of time, he had some understanding of the other party, but he was not completely sure. He didn't know whether the other party pretended to be so innocent in order to deliberately confuse him, or whether she really didn't have any bad intentions. Lin Yi thought that he had a good eye for people, but in the face of this Hui Yudi who suddenly appeared, he was really a little uncertain. If all this was purely an act, then her acting skills were too good. But if the other party was so simple and natural, it didn't seem to be completely so. Could it be that she was both? Whatever you want. My patience is limited. Don't beat around the bush anymore. What do you want me to do? Lin Yi simply asked straightforwardly. Even if he knew that the other party might have saved his confidant, Lin Yi really had no time to waste at the moment. If he wanted to get the first place in this West Island trial, he must race against time. Well, I heard Master mention that in the ruins of the ancient battlefield in West Island, there seems to be a place where the Thunder Xian vine grows. Koyuti no longer hid, and her eyes were shining. Thunder Xian vine? What's that? Lin Yi was stunned when he heard this. He couldn't help but frown a little. The name sounded a little familiar. Koyuti couldn't help but look at Lin Yi. It seemed that he didn't even know this kind of thing. She was stunned for a moment and then said, "That's the main material for refining the Thunder Xian pill." Thunder Xian pill? Lin Yi finally remembered that the Thunder Xian pill was a necessary pill to promote to the profound ascension stage. Although he was now at the peak of the early stage of Yuanying stage, and it seemed that there was still a long time before he reached the profound ascension stage, but with the promotion speed of his strongest Yuanying stage, this time was much shorter than ordinary people. Especially with a fortuitous encounter like the 5-poison swamp, he might reach it in the blink of an eye. Chapter 4666. In the Foundation Establishment stage, there was the Foundation Establishment pill, then the Gold Core pill and the Soul Gathering pill. However, although the Thunder Xian pill was a necessary pill to break through to the Profound Ascension stage, its nature was completely different from the first 3 pills. There was no other reason. The difference between the Profound Ascension stage and the Nascent Soul stage was like heaven and earth. Regardless of whether it was the original infant stage or the previous stage, most people had developed the habit of taking pills to break through. In fact, this concept had already been deeply ingrained in their hearts. But in reality, as long as one had enough talent and perseverance, every realm could be broken through naturally. In principle, there was no need for any medicinal pills. But the Profound Ascension stage was different. As mentioned before, in order to advance to the Profound Ascension stage, one must have more than 2 types of spirit root attributes, and need to fuse 2 types of true qi to advance to the next level. Although this step was extremely difficult, it was the same as the previous stages, and did not require any pills. When 2 types of spiritual roots weave together, they could trigger a lightning tribulation. Thunder retribution was a kind of heavenly punishment. It was the ruthless obliteration of the heavens to those who defy the heavens. In other words, before the Profound Ascension stage, even if one reached the Nascent Soul stage, they could only be regarded as powerful, but not heaven-defying. After all, he hadn't even experienced heavenly punishment. How could he say that he was heaven-defying? Since it was a god's punishment, it was no small matter. Cultivators at the peak of the original level would not be able to withstand it. No matter how powerful the super geniuses were, they would need to take a life-saving elixir if they wanted to survive the lightning tribulation, and that was the Profound Thunder Elixir. It could be said that having a Thunder Xian core was equivalent to having a ticket to the Profound Ascension stage. This did not mean that you could directly open the door, but at least you could guarantee that when you tried to open the door, you would not be killed by the guards. Thinking of this, Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. If the other party said something else, he might not be interested. However, this Thunder Xian Ratan happened to be what he needed. In fact, even if he didn't look for it this time, he would find a way to get it in the near future. He might as well take this opportunity to push the boat along with the current. After all, the rarity of the Thunder Xian Ratan was no less than that of the nascent ginseng. It was not easy for Lin Yi to inquire about any valuable information by himself, let alone to really obtain it. That's good. How do we split it after we find it? Lin immediately said straightforwardly. Determining the distribution of benefits was the most crucial prerequisite for cooperation. If they couldn't even reach an agreement on this point, then there was no need to continue talking. It was purely a waste of time. 3-7, Koyuti blurted out without hesitation. It seemed that she had already thought about it. You take 30 and I take 70? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Impossible. Koyuti immediately choked. Looking at Lin Yi's matter-of-fact expression, she could only shake her head in annoyance. You clearly know. Forget it. Without saying another word, Lin Yi turned around and left. It was as if the Thunder Xian Ratan was not essential to him. He did not want it at all. It was simply wishful thinking to use this little temptation to make him fall into a dilemma. Big brother Lin, Huiyuti pursed her lips and looked at Lin Yi with watery eyes. Her tone and demeanor were actually exactly the same as Han Jingjing's. It was obvious that she had deliberately observed and imitated them. After all, for a beauty like her, no man could resist her coquettish attacks, unless the other party was not a man. At this time, if it was any other man, they would have long been head over heels in love. Not to mention 30 or 70, even if they were to work hard for her, they would not hesitate to nod and agree. Unfortunately, Lin Yi was an exception. Don't waste your effort. I don't fall for it. Lin Yi looked at her coldly. His gaze clearly contained some impatience, and even a hint of warning. This caused Huiyuti to be startled and subconsciously covered her mouth. Didn't Master say that this move would work 100% of the time when dealing with men? Why didn't it work? Huiyuti could not help but feel a little nervous in her heart. She did not expect that Lin Yi was only putting on a stern face at this moment. In fact, there was a slight palpitation in his heart for no reason. However, he concealed it very well, so others could not see it. At the end of the day, Huiyuti's master was not wrong. A beauty's coquettish attacks were effective on any man, especially when used by an absolute beauty like her. At this moment, separated by a veil, only a pair of bright and delicate eyes clearly made Lin Yi feel a moving charm. It was only because he had a firm will and was long used to beauties like Han Jingjing. This woman was definitely a beauty at the level of calamity. Lin Yi secretly raised his guard. If the other party took off her veil at this moment, he really did not dare to say that he would definitely be able to hold on. Although he would not completely lose his mind, once he felt a sense of pity, he might subconsciously give in to the other party. All right then, in order to show my sincerity, I will take a step back. 40 to 60. Seeing that Lin Yi still did not move, Huiyuti could only choose to give in. In her heart, she was speechless. Could it be that what Kang Mingming said before was true? Was this guy really a eunuch? Otherwise, why would her coquettish attacks have no effect at all? Bye-bye. The corner of Lin Yi's mouth twitched, as if he had completely lost his patience. He immediately quickened his pace to shake off the other party. What do you mean? Huiyuti saw this and was immediately shocked. She hurriedly chased after him and asked, "It means to say goodbye. If this is your so-called sincerity, then we have nothing to talk about." Lin Yi said without turning his head. Hearing this, Huiyuti stopped in her tracks. Her expression fluctuated as she looked at Lin Yi's back. She could not help but feel a sense of helplessness in her heart. Why is this guy so stubborn? 50 to 50. This is already a sky-high price. It is also my bottom line. I cannot go any higher. Huiyuti clenched her teeth and said. However, her eyes were filled with the determination to bargain with a small peddler. She was currently at a bottleneck and urgently needed the Thunder Xian pill. If she missed this opportunity, she did not know where she would have to go next time to get the Thunder Xian vine. If she was stuck at a bottleneck for too long, it would drag a genius into a waste. She could not afford to delay it. Let's go with what you said before. Otherwise, there is no need to talk. Lin Yi stopped in his tracks and said. At the same time, the corner of his mouth slightly hooked up. When he said 3 to 7, it naturally had to be reversed. The other party would take 3 and he would take 7. Although his impression of this little girl had improved a lot, this was a different matter. In this kind of matter, Lin Yi would not foolishly give in. After all, the other party was just a stranger that he had never met. Lin Yi's generosity had always been given to friends and people close to him. He would never give alms to strangers, even if the other party was a peerless beauty. Chapter 4667. Forget it if we can't reach an agreement. Lin Yi shook his head and continued to walk forward. Although he said so, he was very sure in his heart that this girl would definitely take the bait. The reason why he dared to extort her so openly was that Lin Yi was sure that Huiyuti would take the bait. It was true that only the other party knew the information, but Lin Yi was 100% sure that the process of getting the Thunder Xian Rattan would be very difficult, and he must help her. Otherwise, why didn't she do it alone? Even if the other party let go of the secular woman whose identity he didn't know, Lin Yi didn't think that Huiyuti would be so kind. The Thunder Xian Rattan was an extremely rare treasure of heaven and earth. She would share it with others for no reason. Was she so free? Since the other party deliberately found Lin Yi, it meant that she needed to rely on him. Therefore, Lin Yi wasn't afraid to scare her away at all. Besides, the other party's need for the Thunder Xian Tan was far more urgent than his. If he didn't take advantage of this ready-made opportunity, Lin Yi would feel sorry for himself. As expected, Hui Yudi stared blankly for a long time. Finally, she squeezed out 2 words from between her teeth: deal. Very well, then it's a happy decision. Lin Yi smiled brightly, but facing this so-called happy way of sharing, Hui Yudi's expression was so depressed that she was about to cry. She even couldn't help but wonder if she had found the wrong person to cooperate with Lin Yi this time. As soon as the 2 of them reached an agreement, 3 people, 2 men and a woman, suddenly came not far behind them. They were talking and laughing as they walked, and they didn't look as serious and cautious as the others. It seemed that the nature of this trial in West Island was like a sightseeing tour for them. There was no difficulty at all. Hey, isn't this Senior Sister Hua? Why didn't you wait for us? The one who spoke was the woman. After seeing Hui Yudi from a distance, she smiled and took the lead to walk over. At the same time, the other 2 men also smiled and followed them. It seemed that they were Hui Yudi's acquaintances. However, after seeing these 3 people, Hui Yudi's face changed, but it was not easy to be noticed by others because of the veil. Then her eyes became indifferent again. The relationship between this chick and the 3 people behind her doesn't seem to be harmonious. Lin Yi saw Hui Yudi's reaction and turned around to size up the 3 people behind him. The woman in the lead was wearing a tight-fitting cyan soft armor, which vividly displayed her exquisite and well-proportioned figure, which was quite tempting. Although her face was not as stunning as Shangguan Laner and the others, she was still a rare beauty. However, in Lin Yi's eyes, she was inferior. No matter how he looked at it, Lin Yi felt that the other party had a frivolous and overbearing aura that he couldn't get rid of. It affected his entire temperament and made him feel very awkward. Therefore, although he looked beautiful, he didn't feel the slightest bit of admiration or amazement. As for the 2 men who came with the woman, they were both handsome young men with bright and cheerful appearances. They should be the type that was popular with girls. Moreover, looking at the way they walked and their expressions, he knew that they were definitely the type that felt good about themselves. Perhaps they had the so-called halo of a genius on their heads. It was a pity that Lin Yi only took a glance at them and didn't care about them. For men, the influence of appearance on their image was far less than the unique aura that was formed unconsciously. According to Lin Yi's experience, any man who had achievements in a certain area would definitely form a unique aura. The aura of these 2 men was at most a little better than that of ordinary people. It was far from leaving a deep impression. In Lin Yi's opinion, they weren't even as good as the Ragged King. So it's Junior Sister Jelly. Hui Yudi nodded indifferently. Then she changed the topic. However, why should I wait for you? The woman called Jelly's expression changed when she heard this. Her cheeks unnaturally hesitated for a moment. She put away her fake smile and looked coldly at Hui Yudi. What? It seems that Senior Sister Hua doesn't welcome me? Could it be that you've turned a deaf ear to the dean's words? Before we set off, she specifically told us to work together. Senior Sister Hua, you don't even care about the dean because of your identity, do you? Hui Yudi squinted her eyes slightly, and the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became cold. Lin Yi could see that this girl really didn't get along with Jelly. Her impatience was obvious. A Junior Sister Yudi and Junior Sister Jelly, you don't have to be so mean to each other. You 2 are known as the Morning Pride twins. In a place like West Island, you should work together. Seeing this, the taller man next to them quickly smoothed things over. Right? We're all from East Continent. It's the right thing to work together. We can't be laughed at by outsiders, which will damage the image of our East Continent College. Another man echoed. While the 2 were talking, their eyes fell on Lin. Although they didn't say anything directly, the arrogance in their bones and the contempt from the bottom of their hearts were really infuriating. However, Lin Yi didn't bother to pay attention to them. Hearing what the 2 said, Hui Yudi couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. She looked at them and didn't say anything. No one knew what she was thinking. Yeah, Senior Sister Hua, the 2 senior brothers are right. You can't ruin the image of our Morning Pride Academy. Jelly's face showed the same kind of smile again. She looked at Lin Yi up and down maliciously. She curled her lips and said, "Senior Sister Hua, aren't you always proud and arrogant, and claimed to be an untouchable ice lotus? You've only left East Continent for a few days. How come you've hooked up with a wild man? Even if you're interested, you should at least pay attention to the image of our college, right? Don't talk nonsense." Hui Yudi was so angry that her pretty face turned red. She looked at Lin Yi awkwardly, turned her head and scolded coldly, "He's just a teammate I found. Junior Sister Jelly, if you say such nonsense again, don't blame me for not considering our relationship as fellow disciples." Jelly frowned and was about to continue mocking, but the tall man standing next to her spoke first. "Teammate? Ha, Junior Sister Yudi, where did you find such a rustic teammate? Is he a native of West Island? I heard that he's always at home serving tea and taking care of children all year round. This is the first time I've seen such a person." Chapter 4668. Anyone could see the greed in his eyes. From the moment he saw Lin Yi talking to Hui Yudi, he already disliked Lin. This was the perfect opportunity to make things difficult for him. Lin Yi frowned slightly when he heard this. Other than Hui Yudi, these people were insignificant in his eyes. He was too lazy to pay attention to them. He didn't even bother to look at them. However, if they didn't have eyes and provoked him, then there was nothing much to say. "All right, native teammate, there's nothing for you to do here. You can leave." The tall man directly waved his hand to signal the guest to leave. Other than him, no other man should even think about getting close to Hui Yudi. Lin Yi turned his head to look at Hui Yudi. He wouldn't get angry because of a few words from this kind of jumping clown. He would either directly ignore it or directly crush it to death. The key was to see what this little girl was going to choose. Hui Yudi frowned. Finally, she gritted her teeth and said to Lin Yi, "Let's go." Lin Yi nodded indifferently. These people didn't enter his eyes. Moreover, this was their internal dispute. Lin Yi had no interest in getting involved at all. "TSK, Senior Sister Hua, what do you want me to say? You actually didn't hesitate to fall out with us for a wild man. People said that you're as pure as ice and as clean as jade. Bah, it turns out that you're just a bastard. You really don't even want your face." Carrie immediately mocked and ridiculed mercilessly. "What did you say?" Hui Yudi suddenly turned around and glared at her. Even Lin Yi couldn't bear to listen to this kind of filthy words, let alone a girl like her who valued her reputation and integrity. "You know what I'm saying. Since you can do this kind of stupid thing, why can't I say it? I say, do you want to keep it for yourself? You can't be naive enough to think that you can get what we're looking for by pulling in such a wild man, right? You're simply daydreaming." Carrie continued to taunt and ridicule. When Lin Yi heard this, his heart moved slightly. Listening to these words, could it be that these people also came for the Thunder Xian Vine? Originally, if it was someone unrelated to him, then he really couldn't be bothered to deal with it. But if it was a competitor... Furthermore, he was so arrogant that it would be inexcusable if he didn't do something about it. Hui Yudi was about to retort, but Carrie didn't give her a chance. She turned to look at Lin Yi and sneered, "Country bumpkin. I'll give you a piece of advice out of goodwill. This senior martial brother Renjong Yuan is senior martial sister Hua Suder. Not only is he very strong, but he also has a bad temper. You should be careful. Don't die." As Carrie spoke, the tall man called Renjong Yuan cooperated with her and sneered coldly. The gaze he looked at Lin Yi shockingly carried a bit of killing intent. It seemed that if he didn't cooperate, this guy really intended to do something. Unfortunately, this person had obviously found the wrong target. Lin Yi's gaze was much colder and sharper than his. When their gazes met, it was Ren Zhongyuan who subconsciously took a step back. This scene really shocked the others. Ren Zhongyuan was a genius disciple of the East Continent Institute. And in everyone's eyes, Lin Yi was nothing more than a country bumpkin. There was absolutely no comparison between them. Who would have thought that Ren Zhongyuan, the genius of the East Continent, would be scared off by a country bumpkin? Having accidentally made a fool of himself, Ren Zhongyuan immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. At this moment, Lin Yi's cold gaze still fell on his face. He indifferently spat out a sentence, "Trash, you better not waste my time. Otherwise, I'll kill you." "What? You actually dare to call me trash? You even said you want to kill me? You're just a country bumpkin, how dare you?" Ren Zhongyuan immediately erupted. The powerful aura of a nascent soul-perfected stage expert instantly poured out without reservation. He was originally an extremely arrogant person. Moreover, right now in front of his sweetheart, Huiyudi, how could he possibly admit defeat? The powerful aura caused the surrounding sand and stones to fly, and the wind to howl. It was a terrifying scene filled with murderous intent. However, Lin Yi stood still in the middle of it. He didn't seem to emit any powerful aura, but the surrounding did not affect him at all. He didn't even blink. Huiyudi was shocked. She didn't know that Lin Yi had the powerful strength to fight against enemies of a higher level. Killing a profound ascending stage expert was like playing a game. She only knew that Lin Yi's current strength was at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. In front of a person like Ren Zhongyuan, it could be said that he was too weak to withstand a single blow. "Senior brother Ren, stop. If that's the case, let's go together. This senior brother Lin's identity is not trivial. You can't be rude to him." Huiyudi hurriedly stood in front of Lin. Once the two sides clashed, in her opinion, Lin Yi would definitely die. In that case, the previous agreement would be in vain. "What? You said that this country bumpkin's background is not small? He's just a country bumpkin, what background can he have?" Jieli curled her lips disapprovingly. "His name is Lin. He's a teammate arranged by my master. His master is an old friend of my master in the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua." Huiyudi clenched her teeth and said. Lin Yi glanced at Huiyudi in surprise. He estimated that she just thought of a lie in a moment of inspiration. However, in Lin Yi's opinion, it was half true and half false. Her brain turned quite fast. "What? Shanghai Tianhua?" Whether it was Jieli, Ren Zhongyuan, or the other man, they couldn't help but change their expressions when they heard Huiyudi's words. Obviously, they had all heard of this top boss of the North Island. However, after Jieli recovered from her shock, she obviously still didn't quite believe it. "Him? He's a disciple of Shanghai Tianhua? Why haven't I heard of him? Didn't you see that he sat with Shangguan Laner at the birthday banquet before? Before entering the teleportation portal just now, Shangguan Laner was still following him. Think about it yourself. If he wasn't the personal disciple of Shanghai Tianhua, would the little princess of the North Island have such a close relationship with him?" Huiyudi said seriously. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh inwardly when he heard that. Although it was a cover, it was 90% true. At least it was true that he had been with Shangguan Lan all this time. He didn't expect this girl to be such a master of lying. She was so good at it, and no one could see through her lies at all. Sure enough, after hearing Huiyudi's words, Ren Zhongyuan and the others had already remembered the scene that they had accidentally glimpsed before. It seemed that Shangguan Laner was beside the person in front of them. In that case, this guy was really a disciple of Shanghai Tianhua. They were the genius disciples of East State College. It was understandable for them to put on a high and mighty attitude when they came out to West Island. After all, the standard of East State was much higher than that of other Heaven Stage islands. However, if the other party was the personal disciple of Shanghai Tianhua, then they were in the wrong place. Chapter 4669. That was because Shangguan Tianhua was one of the top powerhouses of the 5 heaven-ranked islands. Even their backers would have to clasp their hands in greeting when they saw him, to say nothing of juniors like them. "All right, for the sake of Deputy Island Master Shangguan, I'll bring you along to reap some benefits." Ren Zhongyuan snorted coldly and had to stop bitterly. Deputy Island Master Shangguan? This time, it was Lin Yi who was a little stunned. He had been on Heaven Stage Island for so long and had some interactions with Shanghai Tianhua, but he had never heard that this person was actually the Deputy Island Master of the North Island. All along, the North Island had always emphasized the 3 pavilions. From top to bottom, everyone would say that it was the 3 pavilions of the North Island. Under this background, even the Island Master was extremely mysterious, let alone the Deputy Island Master. Everyone knew that Shanghai Tianhua was the pavilion master of Soaring Pavilion, but not many people knew about his identity as the deputy island master of the North Island. At least, newcomers like Lin Yi who were inexperienced had never heard of it. Seeing how Ren Zhongyuan and the others looked at him as if they were giving him charity, Lin Yi didn't have the hostility he had before. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, especially Hui Yudi's pleading eyes, Lin Yi's lips curled up slightly, and he nodded non-committally. All right, thanks for the trouble. Although these people were not worth mentioning, if it was not necessary, Lin Yi did not want to have a conflict with the people of the East Continent for the time being. After all, these people had deep backgrounds in various academies. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Yi did not want to make enemies with them. Seeing that Lin Yi was so cooperative, Hui Yudi finally breathed a sigh of relief. From their previous contact, she had already seen that Lin Yi had an indescribable arrogance. Although it was not obvious on the surface, in fact, it was everywhere. She was really afraid that if Lin Yi had a conflict with these people, it would really be out of control. Fortunately, Lin Yi might be arrogant, but he wasn't completely clueless. At least he knew when to yield and when to stand tall. He was not a brainless person. Junior apprentice Sister Yudai, let's go. Ren Zhongyuan immediately led the way forward. At the same time, he didn't forget to glance back at Lin Yi. I hope you won't be a burden to us. Otherwise, even if you're Vice Island Master Shangguan's personal disciple, it'll be useless. If you die in the trial due to your lack of strength, no one will be able to say anything. Carrie and the other man followed behind her. She also sized up Lin Yi with a profound gaze. With a mocking expression, she said, "Hee, no wonder senior sister Hua took a fancy to you. So you have such a powerful backer. But still, be careful, don't die." Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders indifferently. It seemed that these guys really treated him as a punching bag. Did they really think that he was a pushover? It was fine if nothing happened along the way. Otherwise, he might end up kicking an iron plate. Don't take it to heart. They took their anger out on you because of me. I'm sorry. Hui Yudi deliberately walked at the back with Lin Yi and apologized in a low voice. Oh, it doesn't matter to me. Lin Yi replied with a faint smile. And that's good. Seeing that Lin Yi's calm appearance didn't seem to be fake, Hui Yudi's eyes couldn't help but show some appreciation. A look of admiration appeared in Hui Yudi's eyes. Although her strength was far from Ren Zhongyuan's and the others, it was rare to see such an indifferent attitude. Compared to those people, it was obvious who was superior. Forgive me for asking, but are you sure there's no problem with moving with the three of them? Lin Yi suddenly asked. His goal with Hui Yudi was the Thunder Xianraten. Now, it was obvious that he had disrupted Hui Yudi's original plan and rhythm. If he couldn't obtain the Thunder Xianraten like this, he didn't want to waste time with these people. Hui Yudi was also a little hesitant. She said with some hesitation, one more person means one more strength. Moving with them can be said to have advantages and disadvantages. Let's take it one step at a time. If it doesn't work, we'll think of another way. If that's what you're saying, then I have no objections. Lin Yi nodded. It was obvious that Hui Yudi didn't want to say too much. Her words were ambiguous, and he didn't know what she meant. He then asked, "Oh, by the way, who are they specifically?" Although he could infer some identity information from just a few words, it was, after all, not complete. Lin Yi felt that it was necessary to first find out the other party's background. When there was a conflict, it would be convenient for him to weigh the pros and cons and not have too many misgivings. The man in the front is called Ren Zhongyuan. You also heard this. He is a disciple of East Continent's Soaring Cloud Academy. He doesn't have any background in Soaring Cloud Academy, but he is the son of our academy's Grand Chancellor. Speaking of this person, Hui Yudi's eyes clearly showed a bit of disgust. It could be seen that this suitor was really not in her favor. Grand Chancellor? Lin Yi was stunned. He had heard of positions like Grand Chancellor. For example, his old rival Nantian Aura was the Grand Chancellor of Middle Island's Cultivator Academy. However, this was the first time he had heard of Grand Chancellor. Yes, this is a special position of East Continent's Academy. In terms of authority, it is basically equal to that of the Vice Dean. The two positions both overlap and oppose each other. To a certain extent, the control of the academy is even stronger than that of the vice dean, because all the grand chancellors and students are under the jurisdiction of the grand chancellor. Everything is decided by the grand chancellor. Hui Yudi explained. I see. Lin Yi roughly understood the meaning of this position. It was mostly because East Continent's academy was too powerful, so it was specially set up to balance the power of the academy, so that the vice dean could not cover the sky with one hand. After all, the dean of each academy would not have the mood to personally manage the internal affairs of the academy. The other man is called Yi Xiaodian. He is also a disciple of Soaring Cloud Academy. His uncle is a vice dean of Soaring Cloud Academy. Speaking of this, Hui Yudi suddenly paused. She blushed and said in a mosquito-like voice, he is Jelly's cultivation partner, so he often comes to our academy with Ren Zhongyun. Cultivation partner? Lin Yi could not help but look at the two of them strangely. Sure enough, Yi Xiaoyan's hand was restlessly groping Jelly's body. He dared to do such a thing in front of them. He was really a weirdo. However, this brat might not necessarily be uninterested in Hui Yudi. Although his reaction was not as big as Ren Zhongyuan's, his gaze towards Hui Yudi was clearly filled with lust. Eating from the bowl and looking at the pot, this was a common problem of young masters. As for junior sister Jelly, her full name is Yao Jelly. She is the granddaughter of our Morning Pride Academy's vice dean. Hui Yudi suddenly looked at Lin Yi with a deep meaning, then continued to say, the secular world girl that I told you about before only ended up like this because she offended her. Chapter 4670. No wonder I don't like her. Lin Yi's eyes turned cold. No matter who the secular world girl was, no matter if she was his confidant or not, he had already blacklisted Yao Jelly. Although he didn't plan to deal with her for now, if there was a chance, Lin Yi didn't mind pushing the boat along. Hui Yudi's gaze towards Yao Jelly from behind was not very friendly either. Both of them had the vice headmaster of Morning Pride Academy behind them, and their competitive relationship was fierce, so they had never been on good terms. Especially after the secular world girl incident, the two of them almost fell out, and there were already signs of them breaking up in public. Otherwise, as fellow disciples of Morning Pride Academy, their relationship wouldn't be so bad. Junior sister Yudi, when did you meet him? How come I didn't know? At this time, Ren Zhongyuan, who was walking in front, suddenly took a few steps back and came over. He was obviously jealous of Lin Yi and Hui Yudi's conversation. My master and his master are old friends. Is it strange that we know each other? Hui Yudi replied with a cold face. But I've never heard you mention it before. Why did you suddenly come out this time? Ren Zhongyuan still didn't give up. Senior brother Ren, there are many things you don't know about me. Hui Yudi's tone was stiff, and she was clearly a little impatient with this guy, almost falling out with him. But you're right, that's why I want to know more about you, junior sister Yudi. Ren Zhongyuan, on the other hand, didn't seem to be aware of it at all. He continued to smile as he glanced at Lin Yi discreetly. As long as he didn't let the two of them whisper to each other, he'd have achieved his goal. Hui Yudi looked at him and didn't reply, but Ren Zhongyuan wouldn't give up so easily. The other person's attitude was cold, but he still didn't get tired of it. This kind of dogskin plaster was a match for Kang Mingming. As for Lin Yi, ever since Ren Zhongyuan came over, he simply kept his mouth shut, as if he really had become a follower. In reality, if not for the Thunder Xian Vine, he couldn't be bothered to travel with these people. The five of them continued forward. After walking out of the mouth of the canyon, the front suddenly opened up. Lin Yi originally thought that this was at most a small island, but the scene in front of him shocked him. This was actually a desert. It wasn't a pure desert. Patches of vegetation could still be seen here and there, but at least 80% of what they could see was barren land. It wasn't to say that there wasn't an inch of grass, but it gave off a feeling of death. Ever since they arrived at Heaven Stage Island, every time he went on an adventure or a trial, Lin Yi would basically spend his time in a lush, primitive forest. He did not expect that this time would be an exception. What surprised him even more was that this undulating desert was boundless. It didn't feel like an isolated island in Zhonghai at all. Lin Yi was a little surprised, but his companions didn't seem surprised at all, as if they already knew about it. Thinking about it carefully, it wasn't strange. Morning Pride Academy was a purely female academy, and it had a close relationship with West Island. In the past, even if the trial of West Island was not open to the public, it was not necessarily forbidden for them, so it was normal to know about it in advance. After walking out of the mouth of the canyon, they couldn't see the other trial takers around. These people were all here for the treasures of heaven and earth. Acting separately was the minimum principle. Otherwise, if everyone gathered together, they would have to kill each other when they found some treasures of heaven and earth. That situation was obviously not what they wanted to see. It was not only inefficient, but also stupid. Wait, let's determine the route, Rin Zhongyuan suddenly said. Then he took out a map from his arms. Lin Yi glanced at it from a distance. It should be a map of an island, but this island was obviously much larger than he expected. In terms of area alone, it should be comparable to those big islands in the South Sea. Yi Xiaotian, who was touching Yao Jieli in front, took out a compass from his backpack when he heard this. It looked very exquisite from a distance, and one could faintly feel the fluctuation of a profound formation. This should be a rare high-grade product on the market. No wonder he was the son of East Continent Academy, his equipment was really advanced. The two compared the map with the compass, and soon determined the direction. Rin Zhongyun pointed to a higher hillside in front of the left and said, "Go that way." Rin Zhongyuan took the lead again, and Yi Xiaotian and Yao Jieli followed closely. Hui Yudi frowned, opened her mouth slightly, but did not speak, and followed the three people. Did they really come for the Thunder Xian Ratan? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel troubled. Looking at how serious they were, it was obvious that they'd prepared for this. If that was the case, would his promise with Hui Yudi still be valid? Lin Yi frowned thoughtfully. Looking at the attitude of Rin Zhongyuan and others, he knew that they would definitely not share this rare treasure of heaven and earth with him, and even Hui Yudi might not get much. After all, it seemed that they were incompatible just now. If it really came to that point, they would inevitably fall out. At that time, should he continue to cooperate with Hui Yudi, or simply find a chance to directly take it? After all, if they really fought, the previous agreement would have nothing to do with it. No matter what he did, there was nothing wrong with it. Lin Yi followed them while calculating in his heart. Rin Zhongyuan and others were unaware of this. A mere burden of the early nascent soul stage was nothing in their eyes. These masters of the great perfection of the nascent soul stage did not even put him in their eyes. They did not know that they had become the prey of others. At this moment, they were still immersed in their arrogance and could not extricate themselves. Rin Zhongyuan led the way in front. The five people trekked in the desert for half an hour. Not to mention any crisis along the way, they did not even see a living creature. The scene in front of them was the same. Except for the desert, there was more desert. The only slight change was the terrain. Following the route pointed by the map, everyone found that the terrain under their feet was getting higher and higher. It was originally just a slowly undulating hillside, but now it had become a towering mountain range. The road ahead gradually became narrow, and on both sides were bottomless canyons. However, a desert was a desert after all. Even if the terrain was strange, the scene was really not good to look at. This kind of dull feeling was completely different from the expected crisis. Everyone even couldn't help but have the same doubt. How could there be treasures of heaven and earth in this place? However, things had already come to this point, everyone could only continue to move forward, praying that this time they would not return empty-handed. Otherwise, all the feelings they had been looking forward to for so long would be wasted. Suddenly, there was a trace of inexplicable warning in Lin Yi's heart. The jade pendant sounded at the same time, and his face immediately changed. He quickly stopped and at the same time, pulled Hui Yudi who was not far in front of him. Chapter 4671. Hui Yudi subconsciously whispered. She didn't expect that Lin Yi, who had always been well-behaved and could even be said to be impatient with her, would suddenly make a move. However, before she could finish speaking, there was a sudden change in front of them. More than a dozen vines as thick as buckets suddenly soared from the ground, with a terrifying sound of breaking through the air. They swept towards the direction of the crowd at a speed that was difficult to be seen by the naked eye. Because of the previous repetition, everyone was more or less careless at the moment, and the attack of these giant vines was so sudden and so fierce that Ren Zhongyuan, Yi Xiaotian, and Yao Jieli, who were walking at the front, had no chance to react at all, and were instantly hit by these vines. Only Lin Yi, who was already vigilant, and Hui Yudi, who was pulled by him, barely escaped this disaster. However, Ren Zhongyuan and the other two were masters of the Yuaning stage after all. Even if they were caught off guard and could not avoid it, they still made a response in a hurry. At the moment when they were attacked by this giant vine, Ren Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaotian were covered with a layer of golden true energy at the same time. The vine seemed to be unable to shake the defense of this layer of golden true energy, giving Lin Yi the feeling that it was like the legendary golden bell cover. As for Yao Jieli, although she was not as rigid as Ren Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaotian, her movement technique was extremely flexible. Her whole body twisted quickly like a water snake. At the last moment, she was barely able to avoid her vital parts, but she was inevitably scratched a little, not to mention that she was wearing a cyan soft armor, so this power was still bearable. Seeing this, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. Although her character was not good, there was no doubt about her strength. She was worthy of being an elite master from the East Continent Academy. If it was replaced by other masters of the Yuaning stage, they may not be able to make such a timely response. However, the three of them were still covered in dirt. They were almost knocked down into the valley by these giant vines just now, and were instantly whipped back. After retreating a distance with great difficulty, they stared at the giant vines in front of them that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. What is this thing? While everyone was shocked, Hui Yudi couldn't help but look at Lin. If it weren't for Lin Yi pulling her, she would definitely be like Ren Zhongyuan and the other two at the moment. She would not be injured, but she would definitely be very embarrassed. Everyone carefully retreated while carefully observing the giant vines that had appeared out of thin air. What was surprising was that such a large number of giant vines actually grew from the same root system. In other words, such an earth-shattering momentum actually came from the same plant. Lin Yi looked at the bottom of this terrible plant. Previously, it was difficult to detect because it was hidden in the sand, but at this moment, it was clearly seen that its huge roots had firmly penetrated into the entire mountain, completely blocked the road. How can there be such a strange plant? Seeing that the giant vines were about to attack again, Yao Jieli couldn't help but exclaim in horror. Everyone also couldn't help but look at each other. Just now, they felt that it was boring, but now it was really fun. From the moment of exchange just now, they could feel that this giant vine monster's strength was at least above the Yuaning stage. Even if they joined forces, they didn't have much chance of winning against this strange existence. Hui Yudi retreated to a safe distance and carefully observed for a while. Suddenly, she said, "This is a dummy vine, a vine monster that has become a spirit. I've seen it in an ancient book before." Upon hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little surprised. He had seen all kinds of powerful spirit beasts, but plants were very rare. However, it wasn't that he had never seen them before. At least, there were similar existences in the mountains behind the North Island. During that trip to Half Moon Lake, if it weren't for the ghost that deterred it, Lin Yi would have already become a pile of fertilizer. Although Lin Yi's strength at that time was much lower than now, his intuition told him that although the dummy vine in front of him was strong, it was far from being comparable to the monster in the mountains behind the North Island. After all, the entire Half Moon Lake was the body of that guy. Even the ghost couldn't do anything to it, and the dummy vine in front of him was obviously not at that level. Lin Yi evaluated in his heart. Judging from the fight between Ren Zhongyuan and the others and the dummy vine just now, with his strength, he should be able to kill the dummy vine, but with the strength of the others, it was not so easy to say. "That's right, I remember." After listening to Hui Yudi's words, Yi Xiaotian suddenly shouted, "This is the ancient battlefield, and there are remnants of artistic conception and spiritual energy everywhere. After the plants here absorb it, it is very likely that there will be a mutation. That's how the dummy vine came about. I'm afraid that it doesn't just absorb artistic conception and spiritual energy. Maybe even the remnant spirit of the battlefield will be swallowed by it. Otherwise, how can it become such a terrible monster?" Ren Zhongyuan said with a look of fear. It was pure luck that he wasn't injured just now. His protective golden bell was almost smashed by the giant vine. If that really happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. Then what should we do? Yao Jieli became more and more frightened. Among the three of them, she was the most embarrassed. The shock that the dummy vine brought to her was naturally far more profound than the others. She immediately panicked and said, "We want to pick the long routes, so this is the only way, right?" Ren Zhongyuan's face suddenly changed, and he glared at Yao Jieli fiercely. It seemed that he was very angry with her for revealing the purpose of their trip. Yao Jieli reacted. There were not only the three of them present. Hui Yudi was fine, but there was also an outsider, Lin Yi, behind them. Forget it, it doesn't matter if that kid knows. Anyway, it has nothing to do with him. Yi Xiaotian mediated for her. In fact, Lin Yi was only at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. They didn't put him in their eyes at all. For the sake of Shanghai Tianhua's reputation, they could just give him some things. If he really dared to ask for rare treasures, then they would teach him how to behave. While the three of them were talking, Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly whisper, "What was this long route?" But in this way, the purpose of these three people was not the same as that of Hui Yudi. That was to say, they didn't know that Hui Yudi was going to find the Thunder Xian vine. Thinking about it carefully, it was normal. Although they were in the same school, the fierce competition could be said to be incompatible like fire and water. It was impossible to achieve a real sense of mutual exchange, especially when it came to strategic-level treasures like the Thunder Xian vine. Hui Yudi could probably know it from Lu Ziyu, the master who was on good terms with West Island. People like Ren Zhongyuan might not have this way. R1152. Chapter 4672. Lin Yi turned his head and glanced at Hui Yudi, who happened to be looking at him at the moment. Not only because his previous reaction made her look at him in a new light, but also because she was giving him a look. Don't leak the matter of the Thunder Xian vine, or these people would definitely become big trouble. There were dummies blocking the way in front, and everyone was unwilling to go back like this, so they were suddenly in a dilemma. Lin Yi and Hui Yudi, on the other hand, didn't really care. They weren't here for the immortal route in the first place, and they didn't even want to travel with these people. At this moment, they stood at the back and didn't have any intention of stepping forward to solve the problem. Senior brother Yi, quickly think of a way. What should we do now? Should we change the route? Yao Jieli asked in a panic. Change the route? How is that possible? Don't you see that there are bottomless canyons on both sides? Even if we can find the second route, how long will it take? Our time is limited. Yi Xiaotian shook his head again and again. The trial time of Yuanying stage peak was at most 1 month. Although it was the longest compared to others, it was still very limited and couldn't afford to waste any time. Yes, even this mountain peak has such a terrible monster. Who knows what is in the bottomless canyon? Maybe it is a mass grave left from ancient times, and there are terrible existences in it that we don't even dare to think about. It's hard to say whether we can survive it or not. Ren Zhongyuan agreed. Doesn't that mean we have no other choice? Yao Jieli's face couldn't help but turn a little blue. Just now, it was only one of the giant vines that attacked her, but in front of them was a dense mass of dummies. These giant vines were simply overwhelming, and there were dozens or even hundreds of them. If they were a little careless, wouldn't they be smashed into pieces? There is no other way, there is only one way, we can't give up halfway. Let's go. Ren Zhongyuan took a deep breath, and the protective golden bell on his body appeared again. He braced himself and took the lead to kill the dummies in front of him. Even though he knew that there was a tiger in the mountain, he still had to go there. He did not want to appear cowardly in front of Hui Yudi, especially when there was such a loathsome person like Lin. Although the disparity between them meant that they would not be rivals in love or competitors, what if this brat had ulterior motives and took the opportunity to belittle him in front of Hui Yudi? Yi Xiaotian and Yao Jieli looked at each other. They had no choice but to follow her. Before they made their move, Yao Jieli intentionally glanced at Hui Yudi and Lin. With a mocking tone, he said, "Don't tell me the two of you intend to just watch and pick up the spoils?" Hui Yudi coldly snorted, and without saying a word, she stepped forward to attack the dummy vine. Although she wasn't willing to travel with these people, she wasn't shameless enough to do so. Moreover, the other party wouldn't let her enjoy the fruits of their labor. Lin Yi had originally thought that for a delicate girl like Hui Yuti, the martial technique she used would definitely be on the gentle side, just like Yao Jieli's water snake-like movement technique. After all, both of them were from the Morning Pride Academy. The martial technique they used shouldn't be too different. However, when Hui Yuti made her move, his eyes suddenly lit up. The girl's martial technique was elegant with speed and decisiveness. It was even better than Rin Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaotian. When he saw Hui Yuti, who was like a butterfly, easily cut off a giant vine with one palm, Lin Yi couldn't help but smack his lips. He touched his chin and sighed, "You really can't judge a book by its cover." Looking at the 4 people flying up and down to deal with the dummy vine, although Lin Yi didn't want to help, he was also embarrassed to really stand on the side and watch the show. His figure immediately swayed and moved forward. However, he was purely acting. At first glance, it seemed that the giant vines were whistling around him. It seemed to be in imminent danger, but in fact, there was no threat at all. Lin Yi could deal with it easily with the butterfly micro-steps alone. As for the super butterfly micro-steps and the faster butterfly micro-steps, it was purely overkill to use them at this time. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't just dodging. Occasionally, he'd make a move, but it was only when Hui Yuti was in danger that he'd sneakily lend her a hand, giving her the finishing blow. It had to be said that this dummy vine was really fierce and terrifying. So many Yuanying stage perfection joined forces to besiege them, but they were still suppressed by it. Everyone was hit by the fire chi, and the situation could only barely be maintained at 50-50. If they were not careful, they would all be wiped out. Lin Yi took this opportunity to carefully observe. Although these 4 people were all at the Yuanying stage perfection, when they really fought, Hui Yuti was the strongest, followed by Rin Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaotian, and Yao Jieli's strength was the weakest. In a short moment, Yao Jieli had been hit by the giant vine from the back, and she spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. If it weren't for the cyan soft armor to offset most of the damage for her, she might have died on the spot. In contrast, Rin Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaotian had a defensive martial skill like the Golden Bell, so they were slightly calmer than Yao Jieli, but they were not much better. The damage that the Golden Bell could withstand was limited, and the power of these giant vines had reached this critical point. Once it was broken, the 2 of them would not feel good either. Among the 4 people, Hui Yuti's performance was the most dazzling. She did not have the defense of the Golden Bell, and her movement technique was not as weird as Yao Jieli's. Every move was beautiful but could quickly subdue the enemy. Before this, it was hard for Lin Yi to imagine that a weak woman who knew how to act coquettishly could be so powerful. Every time a giant vine got close to her, she did not dodge or avoid it. Now, more than a dozen giant vines had been broken under her feet. This result was more than the other 3 people combined. After Ren Zhongyuan and the others saw Hui Yuti's performance, they couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. As a man, if they were defeated by a woman at this time, they would be laughed at. Especially Ren Zhongyuan, how could he have the face to pursue Hui Yuti in the future? She just casually mentioned it, and he was ashamed to death. What he didn't know was that Hui Yuti's extraordinary victory was at least partly due to Lin Yi, who had helped her out from behind the scenes. Otherwise, she might have been injured like Yao Jieli. Ren Zhongyuan immediately roared like a madman, and the protective golden bell covering his body suddenly exploded. The giant vines within a radius of 50 feet were all shattered into powder in an instant. A large number of people were killed and injured in an instant. Chapter 4673. If one did not understand it in advance, the enemy would suffer a great loss. Even if he underestimated the enemy, he might be injured. It was indeed a brilliant martial art from East Continent Academy. After Rin Zhongyuan, Yi Xiaotian also did the same thing. The protective golden bell suddenly exploded another giant vine. In this way, more than half of the nearly 100 giant vines of the dummy vine were removed. The pressure on everyone was greatly reduced, and it was obviously not as difficult to deal with as it was at the beginning. After fighting bitterly for another incense stick of time, The dummy vine was finally destroyed by everyone. At this time, except for Lin Yi, everyone was injured. Needless to say, Yao Jieli was the weakest. Ren Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaotian took the initiative to explode the protective golden bell. Although the effect was great, they also lost the means to protect themselves. After that, they were injured one after another. As for Hui Yudi, under the special care of Lin Yi, her injury was the lightest. She was only slightly scratched, which was negligible. A follower who only knows how to take advantage of others, useless. Yao Jieli, who was the most seriously injured, glared at Lin. She wanted to target Hui Yudi the most, but unfortunately, the pile of giant vines at the opponent's feet really made her unable to speak. Who asked her to be less than a fraction of the opponent's? We didn't expect him to be of much use in the first place, and we'd be thankful if he didn't drag us down. Anyone with even a little bit of self-awareness and shame would know what to do now. Continuing to follow us with a thick face is going to get us killed. Ren Zhongyuan said with a meaningful look. The meaning of his words was obvious. He wanted to drive Lin Yi away. He wanted this follower to know the difficulties and retreat, so as not to ruin the good things between him and Hui Yudi. Senior brother Ren is right. Hui Yudi suddenly nodded at this time. Lin Yi paused slightly when he heard this, but Ren Zhongyuan was instantly overjoyed. Even Hui Yudi said this, which meant that she had seen the performance of the battle just now, and had finally recognized who the useless trash was, and who the thigh she should hug tightly was. Still not leaving? You don't know what's good for you. Do you want us to send you off? Ren Zhongyuan grinned at Lin. His face was full of schadenfreude. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to speak, Hui Yudi suddenly said, "Let's go. This place is too dangerous. I don't want to go. You guys can go by yourselves." Hui Yudi didn't even look at the crowd after she finished speaking. He gave Lin Yi a look. He turned around and left. What was going on? I was talking about this brat just now, not you, junior apprentice sister Yudai. Please don't misunderstand. Ren Zhongyuan was dumbfounded for a moment before he came to his senses. He immediately wanted to chase after her. I know, this is my own idea, it has nothing to do with you guys. I wish you all good luck. Hui Yudi had already made up her mind. She was clearly prepared to use this as an excuse to get rid of everyone. She didn't want to waste her time with them anymore. It was okay for her, but the trial time for Lin Yi, who was at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, was not as long as a month. What? Senior apprentice sister Hua, you don't want the everlasting root anymore? This time, even Yao Jieli was shocked. The everlasting root was the dream of all of them. To say that Hui Yudi didn't care about it was absolute nonsense. This was a rare opportunity to find the everlasting root. How could she give it up halfway because of such a small matter? Hui Yudi stopped in her tracks and nodded at them with a seemingly sincere expression. She admitted, "This is your fate and fortune. I don't have this fortune. If you don't have this strength, then don't even think about it. I still have this bit of self-awareness." Coward. Yao Jieli's expression changed. Hui Yudi's words were basically pointing at the mulberry tree and scolding the locust tree. Her strength was definitely stronger than hers. She was indirectly scolding her for having wishful thinking. "Don't worry, I'll protect you. Don't worry, I definitely won't let you get hurt." Ren Zhongyuan hurriedly patted his chest as a guarantee. Lin Yi glanced at him playfully. This guy was already in a sorry state. He hadn't even wiped off the blood on his face, yet he still had the nerve to pat his chest. He really didn't know what to say. There's really no need. It's too dangerous here. The dummy vine is already so difficult to deal with. It almost wiped out all of us. And this is just the beginning. I don't want to take this risk. You guys don't have to persuade me anymore. Hui Yudi's tone was firm. Ren Zhongyuan still didn't give up and wanted to persuade her a few more words. However, Yao Jieli, who was at the side, spoke up first. "All right then. Since senior sister Hua is so afraid of death, we can't force you. Let's say goodbye here. We'll meet again someday." The reason why she specifically invited Hui Yudi to join them was not out of kindness. It was purely because she was afraid that this little girl and Lin Yi would sneak a step ahead of them and find the everlasting root before them. And now, based on the map and the current situation, there was only one route. As long as Hui Yudi didn't follow them, there was no chance of finding the everlasting route. Since the outcome was already decided, what else did she have to worry about? With her and Hui Yudi's irreconcilable relationship, would she still be worried that the other party wouldn't be able to get the everlasting route and wouldn't be able to get a share of the loot? All along, although Yao Jieli and Hui Yudi were known as the Morning Pride duo, in reality, she had always been inferior to the other party. This was because her grandfather's power wasn't as great as Lu Ziyu's, and because she wasn't as strong as the other party. Even when it came to looks, which women cared about the most, she was still inferior to the other party. Not only did she hate this woman who suppressed her in all aspects, but she even wished for the other party to die. If curses could be used, Hui Yudi would have long been cursed by her to the point where she would never be able to reincarnate. Moreover, this time, it wasn't just Hui Yudi alone. She also brought along a burden like Lin Yi to make up the numbers. With this brat's identity as Shanghai Tianhua's direct disciple, she couldn't kill him. What if he didn't have eyes and wanted a share of the loot? Although this was purely wishful thinking, it was still a problem that had to be faced. Now that Hui Yudi took the initiative to quit, Lin Yi naturally couldn't stay. Even if he wanted to stay, everyone would definitely kick him out. Suddenly, there were two guys who wanted a share of the loot. For Yao Jieli and the others, this was exactly what they wanted. Yes, she couldn't wait for the two of them to get away as far as possible. Ren Zhongyuan looked at Yao Jieli and then at Hui Yudi, who turned her head and left. He still wanted to try to save them. After all, this West Island trial was a rare opportunity to get along. After this village, he didn't know if there would be another chance like this. Chapter 4674. At the same time, Yi Xiaoyan also glanced at Hui Yudi with greed. He did have some thoughts about Hui Yudi, but he was not stupid. With his identity and background, it was not a problem to have a mistress other than Yao Jieli, but this mistress would definitely not be Hui Yudi. Unless Hui Yudi had fallen, or her master, Lu Ziyu, had completely lost his power, why would she follow him, Yi Xiaotian? He had no intention of giving up on Yao Jieli. This girl was much more exciting when she was coquettish than those so-called girls. Moreover, their families were old friends. Coveting Hui Yudi was purely a fantasy. The most important thing now was to serve Yao Jieli well. Only then would he be able to obtain more benefits and benefits. Let's go. Hui Yudi nodded to Lin Yi, and the two immediately went back the way they came, parting ways with Yao Jieli and the others. Junior sister Yudi? Ren Zhongyuan shouted angrily, but the other party did not turn her head at all, and just waved her hand indifferently. Ren Zhongyuan watched helplessly as Hui Yudi left, especially with a potential love rival by her side. He suddenly had an urge to chase after her. He didn't want to give the two of them a chance to be alone. A man and a woman alone with Hui Yudi, this was a scene that would only appear in his dreams. However, Ren Zhongyuan could not take this step in the end. After Hui Yudi went back, he could still chase after her, but if he missed this opportunity, there would not be a second chance. Looking deeply at Hui Yudi's back, Ren Zhongyuan gritted his teeth and turned to follow the footsteps of Yao Jieli and Lu Ziyu. This time, he must get the longevity route. At that time, as long as he divided a little bit, he could let Hui Yudi throw herself into his arms. The two sides parted ways. Lin Yi and Hui Yudi walked for half an hour, until Lin Yi's divine sense could not lock onto the three people, and then he finally took a break. So they don't know about the Thunder Xian Ratan. I thought they were our competitors. Lin Yi suddenly said in a faint tone. Why should we tell them about such an important treasure as the Thunder Xian Ratan? Wouldn't that be looking for trouble for myself? The few of them aren't easy to deal with. If they really find the Thunder Xian vine, it's hard to guarantee that they won't have any thoughts that they shouldn't have. At that time, I will be outnumbered. Hui Yudi shook her head. That might not be the case. At the very least, that Ren Zhongyuan will help you. Lin Yi smiled, but he was even more certain in his heart. For the Thunder Xian vine this time, Hui Yudi was probably preparing to borrow his 5 elements physique. Otherwise, Ren Zhongyuan and the other two were all at the peak of the nascent soul realm, and they were all disciples of the East Continent College who knew each other well. Even if she did not have a good relationship with Yao Jieli, It should not be a big problem if it was just a cooperation. At least, it would not be as unreliable as Hui Yudi herself said. On the other hand, Lin Yi was just an expert at the peak of the early nascent soul realm. There was no friendship between the two sides. No matter how you looked at it, the three people were more suitable to cooperate with each other. The only difference was his 5 elements physique. However, what was the relationship between the 5 elements physique and the Thunder Shen Vine? This was a problem that needed to be clarified. Of course, Lin Yi did not intend to open his mouth to ask at this time. When it came in handy, the other party would naturally say that talking too much now would do more harm than good. Hui Yudi was silent for a moment. After turning her head to look at Lin Yi, she changed the topic and said, "Your strength seems to be very strong? Isn't it just the peak of the early nascent soul realm? In front of you experts at the peak of the nascent soul realm, this is considered strong?" Lin Yi curled his lips and smiled. For many geniuses who can challenge those who are stronger than them, the strength on the surface is nothing. I believe that you are this kind of person. Hui Yudi smiled slightly, paused and said, "Thank you for before." It was nothing. Lin Yi waved his hand indifferently. Previously, when they were dealing with the humanoid vine, although he secretly helped in the chaos, others like Ren Zhongyuan could not see it, but after a few times, Hui Yudi would definitely be able to feel it. Otherwise, she would be too slow. If that was the case, Lin Yi would really have to consider the matter of cooperation. If he cooperated with such a slow girl to find the Thunder Shen Vine, it would be fatal. Can I ask, out of curiosity, what exactly is your strength? As a partner, I think we should first clarify this matter, so that we do not make mistakes during the operation. Hui Yudi looked at Lin Yi with a burning gaze. As you can see, Lin Yi shrugged noncommittally. Of course, he would not reveal his true strength to a stranger he met for the first time. Moreover, there was no need for him to lie. At the very least, he was at the peak of the early nascent soul realm. There was no doubt about this. I'm talking about your true strength. That humanoid vine, even the few of us could not escape unscathed. Only you were not injured. If you say that you are at the peak of the early nascent soul realm, I will definitely not believe it. Hui Yudi shook her head with certainty. I'm just good at body techniques. It can't hit me, so of course it won't get hurt. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. He didn't bother explaining and kept his mouth shut. Hui Yudi looked deeply at Lin Yi and did not continue to ask. Now was not the time to get to the bottom of it. Since the other party was not willing to confess, then it was enough to know. While the two were talking, they had already returned to a fork in the road. Hui Yudi took out a map from her backpack and compared it to the map. She nodded at Lin Yi and said, "This is the way." After saying that, she immediately led the way. Although it was a bit unreasonable for a girl to take the risk to lead the way, who asked Lin Yi to not know the route? Hui Yudi would not tell him this kind of thing in advance. After the previous incident, Lin Yi had become a bit hidden in her heart. She still had to be careful. The sky gradually darkened and the road ahead began to become a bit difficult to walk on. In addition to the fact that they had been on the road for 6 hours, both Hui Yudi and Lin Yi were somewhat tired. With their strength, it did not matter how long they walked. The key was to advance in this place. Every step they took had to be careful and vigilant. Facing the monotonous desert scenery, they had to be on high alert at all times. After all, the previous humanoid vine was only a small warning. Who knew what kind of terrifying existence they would encounter next? Under this kind of omnipresent spiritual pressure, even a peak nascent soul expert would not be able to withstand it for a long time. Chapter 4675. Therefore, they had to find a way to cross as soon as possible, so that even if they couldn't get the Thunder Shen Ratan, they wouldn't return empty-handed along the way. It was dusk. Although the sky was gray, the outline of the setting sun could be vaguely seen. Lin Yi couldn't help guessing what the gray was. It wasn't like sea fog, nor was it the unique miasma of the South Island. Looking carefully, there seemed to be a trace of blood in it, giving people the feeling that it was a cloud stained with blood. This was not impossible. After all, this was the ancient battlefield. Even if everything was lacking, there was absolutely no lack of blood and death chi. Suddenly, Hui Yudi in front of him let out a groan, and then she fell to the ground without warning. What happened? Lin Yi couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't notice anything unusual, and the jade pendant didn't warn him. What the hell was this girl doing? Did she not give up and deliberately fell down to win his sympathy by pretending to be pitiful, so that she could take the opportunity to ask for more after she succeeded? Wasn't the hole in her brain a little too big? If he was such an easy person to be hooked, how could he bargain with her so quickly in the beginning? What was the point of doing this kind of superfluous thing? Looking at Huiyuti with a strange expression, Lin Yi stood behind her for a moment with his hands clasped. However, Huiyuti didn't get up by herself, nor did she have any intention of calling for help. Did something really go wrong? Lin Yi was a little surprised and walked to her with doubts. Only then did he find that Huiyuti's forehead was sweating, and her face was pale and even a little black. She seemed to be in great pain. Even his breathing had started to become unstable. Lin Yi couldn't help but be shocked again. An expert at the peak of the nascent soul realm couldn't even stabilize her breath in such a short time, which meant that a great change must have happened to her. But just now she just walked normally, and he didn't find any danger. Could it be that she had a relapse of some old disease? What's wrong with you? Lin Yi quickly helped Huiyuti sit up and let her lean on him, so that at least her breath could be a little more stable. Huiyuti didn't answer. Her breathing was rapid and her eyes were lifeless. She probably couldn't even hear what Lin Yi was saying, let alone reply. Lin Yi frowned. He had no choice but to examine her body himself. However, when he lowered his head, he was shocked. Previously, it was difficult to notice it because the dress had covered it. It was only at this moment that she inadvertently moved. Only then did he realize that there was something hanging from her calf. At first glance, it looked like a small lizard, but it had 8 legs, and its head was triangular like a viper's. Its eyes were suffused with an alarming blue light. What is this? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. Huiyuti's sudden reaction had to have something to do with this thing. The thing was small, but it gave off an intimidating aura that wasn't any weaker than the mannequin. In Lin Yi's opinion, it was even more than that. For a moment, Lin Yi didn't know what to do. At this time, Huiyuti suddenly rolled her eyes, and her head drooped down powerlessly. This gave Lin Yi a big shock. This little girl wouldn't die just like that, right? He had spent so much time with Huiyuti just for the Thunder Mystic Vine. Now, he hadn't even seen its shadow. If she was killed by a small lizard, how could he bear it? Lin Yi quickly checked Huiyuti's breath. Although it was weak, it hadn't completely disappeared. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. As long as she wasn't dead, it was fine. He was also considered a miracle doctor, so he had a good way of treating injuries. Since the source of the problem was this lizard-like monster, the first thing to do before treating Huiyuti's injury was, of course, to kill this thing first. Lin Yi's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and he immediately punched out without saying anything. His fist looked ordinary, but he had used 50% of his strength. This strange thing was able to defeat Huiyuti in such a short period of time, so it was not ordinary at all. He absolutely could not underestimate it in the slightest. After punching out, Lin Yi originally thought that this lizard-like monster would either be killed by him or turn to attack him. However, to his surprise, facing his attack, the lizard-like monster just dodged to the side indifferently. It still didn't have any intention of letting go of Huiyuti's calf. At the same time it dodged, its evil blue eyes looked up at Lin Yi from below. It seemed to be mocking and provoking. A mere beast also dared to be so savage. Lin Yi was instantly enraged. He no longer took it lightly. Accompanied by a low dragon roar, a small 5-element murderous aura suddenly shot out from his palm and hit the lizard-like monster in an instant. With a chi sound, the lizard-like monster was hit head-on by the 5-element murderous aura. Only then did it finally let go of Huiyuti's calf. After rolling on the ground a few times, it twitched wildly and died in the blink of an eye. Lin Yi looked at the corpse of the lizard-like monster on the ground. Such a small thing could actually force him to use his killer move. The ancient battlefield ruins were indeed full of danger. There were all kinds of strange threats everywhere. After dealing with the lizard-like monster, Lin Yi checked Huiyuti's condition again. However, he found that at this moment, her breath had become increasingly weak. If this continued, she might really die. At this moment, Hui Yudi's calf, which had originally been as smooth and white as jade, had turned purplish-black under the illumination of the moonlight. In particular, the wound that had been bitten by the lizard monster was continuously oozing out a terrifying black liquid, and there were faint signs of rotting. Poison! Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. Although he could roughly judge from the appearance of the lizard-like monster, at this moment, he really saw that the poison was acting up. Moreover, it was acting up so violently. This was really troublesome. If it was just a simple injury, even if it involved the internal organs, it would not be a big deal in the hands of Lin Yi. After all, he had the universal true qi. However, it was hard to say if she was poisoned. Just the universal true qi alone was not enough. If it was not handled properly, Hui Yudi's leg would be completely crippled. She might even lose her life. Lin Yi may be a miracle doctor, but that was limited to the common world. He didn't know anything about the weird poisons on this island, and he'd been busy practicing for the past 2 years. He'd never had the time to do any systematic research, especially when it came to these weird spirit beasts. He'd never even heard of them before, so how was he supposed to treat them? Chapter 4676. Senior, do you know what this thing is? Helpless, Lin Yi had no choice but to seek help from the ghost, the former Azure Dragon. This guy should know everything about spirit beasts. Well, strictly speaking, this thing is not a spirit beast, but an insect subject. The ghost thing pondered for a moment. This is an insect? Lin Yi paused as he looked at the carcass on the ground. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a mutated venomous lizard. He didn't expect it to be an insect. That's right. If I remember correctly, its full name should be eight-legged tooth insect. Although its intelligence isn't very high, its body is highly toxic, and the toxicity is very strong. Even a profound ascending stage master can be easily taken down. The ghost explained. Even a profound ascending stage master can be taken down? Lin Yi was shocked. In his impression, ordinary poisons had no effect on high-level cultivators. Many poisons could easily kill ordinary people, but the effect was greatly reduced for high-level cultivators. Especially at the nascent soul stage, it could be said to be no threat at all. He didn't expect the toxicity of this strange thing to be so strong. Yes, this thing is a rare poison. You can keep its corpse. Maybe it will come in handy in the future. It may be used for alchemy or forging. The ghost thing said. Okay. Lin Yi moved the body of the eight-legged tooth claw worm into the space of the jade pendant. Then he looked at Hui Yudi, whose breath was getting weaker and weaker. What about her? If we don't think of a countermeasure quickly, she will die. From the beginning until now, he'd spent so much effort following her for so long, and he hadn't even seen the shadow of the Thunder Xian vine. If Hui Yudi really died in a place like this, then he'd really be screwed. What should we do? It's very simple. You just need to help her cure the poison. The ghost thing said indifferently. How do I cure this? Lin Yi couldn't help but scratch his head. This is not difficult. The most primitive method will do. Use your mouth to suck it out. The ghost thing laughed. Use my mouth? Lin Yi almost choked. He coughed for a while and said, Cuff, wouldn't I be dead then? Senior, didn't you just say that this poison can even easily kill a profound ascending stage master? Others will die, but you won't, the ghostly thing said in a confident tone. But Lin Yi was surprised. Don't think that I don't know that you're immune to all poisons. Didn't that old Lin make it for you? Your physique has been tempered since you were young. Now that you have become stronger, it will only become more stable. No matter how strong the poison is, it will be useless on your body, said the ghostly thing. You even know this? Lin Yi was even more astonished. The ghost had been with him for quite some time now, but that was only a short time before he came to Sky Class Island. If he hadn't mentioned it before, there shouldn't be any reason for him to know about it, especially since the matter of his immunity to poison had been exposed to Old Man Lin. Oh, when I had nothing to do, I casually looked through your past in your divine knowledge sea, so I still have some impression of this kind of thing. The ghostly thing curled its lips indifferently. What? You peeped at my memory? Lin Yi was shocked. He had never thought that there would be such a thing before. If it could casually look through his own memory, then wouldn't there be no secrets in front of this ghostly thing? This feeling of being seen was too scary, right? Although this ghostly thing was not an outsider. At least at this stage, Lin Yi and it were bound together. But even so, this feeling of having all his secrets seen by someone else. It really made people shudder just thinking about it. Hey, I have nothing to do anyway, so I used it to kill time and relieve boredom. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your little secrets. The ghostly thing laughed. Can I ask, Senior, where did you learn this shameless behavior from? Why do I always meet such bad people? Lin Yi was suddenly speechless. He didn't feel it when he was not familiar with it, but now that he was familiar with it, he suddenly realized that this ghostly thing was also a playful old man. He couldn't help but think of the old man. Don't mutter. Hurry up and treat her poison, it's already spread. If you don't hurry up, this girl will die for sure. The ghostly thing interrupted with a strange laugh. All right. Seeing that the purplish-black part on Hui Yudi's calf was getting bigger and bigger, Lin Yi didn't dare to think about those useless things anymore. After laying Hui Yudi flat on the ground, he immediately clenched his teeth and lay down. At this moment, Hui Yudi's wound had already melted, and black liquid was constantly flowing out. When Lin Yi got closer, he almost vomited on the spot. He used the last of his willpower to resist the nausea and put his mouth on it. While treating Hui Yudi's poison, Lin Yi secretly felt helpless. He thought to himself that when this girl recovered, he had to renegotiate with her about splitting the profits. Otherwise, she would have sucked the poison for nothing. Lying on Hui Yudi's calf, Lin Yi didn't feel the slightest bit enchanting at this moment. Although he had a super strong physique that was immune to poison, the poison of the eight-legged tooth crackworm was really terrifying. Every time he sucked from Hui Yudi's wound, there would suddenly be a burning pain on his mouth. After a while, the poison in Hui Yudi's body finally subsided. The originally purplish-black calf gradually recovered a trace of color, and the somewhat weak breath also began to stabilize. However, this made Lin Yi suffer. Although the poison had no effect on him, the burning pain was real. Not to mention anything else, his mouth was almost numb now. Although his mouth was numb, Lin Yi didn't dare to relax at all. Although Hui Yudi's condition was showing signs of improvement, the poison of the eight-legged tooth crackworm could easily kill a profound ascending stage master. Even a little bit of it could take Hui Yudi's life. What's more, although Lin Yi was immune to poison, he didn't dare to take it lightly. What if the poison was too overbearing and he was accidentally poisoned? Lin Yi was lying next to Hui Yudi's leg to treat her poison. At this moment, two sneaky figures suddenly appeared not far away. They were two men. Although they didn't wear a uniform, there was a badge with a double cloud spreading wings pattern on their neckline. This kind of badge was also worn by Ren Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaoyun. It was the symbol of Soaring Cloud Academy. Chapter 4677. Because of their low strength, these two people were probably at the bottom of all the participants of the West Island trial. They were disciples of the East Continent's Soaring Cloud Academy, and they could follow the envoy to the West Island, but their strength was actually at the bottom of all the participants. This was really a rare thing. The sun was setting, and it was getting dark at this time. The two people's strength was low, so no matter what kind of ferocious creatures or other trial takers they encountered, it could be a fatal threat to them. So it was not strange that the two of them walked so stealthily. Every step they took was very careful. The two of them moved forward bit by bit, while muttering and complaining to each other. Alas, I don't know what Brother Ren and Brother Yi are thinking. They specially brought us two followers to the West Island, but now they leave us behind at such a critical time and let us act alone. It's such a dangerous place. If we're not careful, we'll be killed. Hey, Sun Balu, are you stupid? This trial is a rare opportunity for Brother Ren and Brother Yi to be alone with beautiful women. How could they take us with them and ruin the fun? One of the men wearing a bamboo hat curled his lips and said, "They don't have to leave us behind on purpose. At worst, they can follow them a little further. We won't disturb their good time, and we can help them carry things. Didn't they do the same when they went out to play before?" Sun Baolu shook his head helplessly, then lowered his voice and said, "According to my speculation, in fact, Brother Ren and Brother Yi didn't leave us behind for this thing at all, but to find some very rare treasures of heaven and earth. What do you think, Liu Zhou? Hiss, now that you mention it, I really remember. Before we came to the West Island, when Brother Yi and Sister Yao talked, I heard a few words. It seemed that they were really looking for some treasures of heaven and earth. They had prepared for it for a long time in advance. They just kept it a secret from us. Liu Zhou couldn't help but feel a little resentful when he said this. I already guessed this. This is the fate of us followers. Good things never happen to us, but bad things happen to us every time. Hey. Sun Baolu laughed at himself. This was something that couldn't be helped. Who asked these people to have no background? In order to establish a foothold in the Eastern Continent College, which was a dangerous place like the Dragon Pool and the Tiger Cave, one must have either strong strength or a deep background. Otherwise, they would be swallowed whole. People like them could only rely on young masters like Ren Zhongyuan and Yi Xiaoyun. There was no other way out. The two of them grumbled softly as they carefully explored forward. Suddenly, Liu Zhou stopped in his tracks. His eyes were looking straight ahead, and his mouth was agape for a long time. What are you doing? Was he possessed by a ghost? Seeing this, Sun Baolu couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He thought they were being targeted by some unknown monster. With their strength in the peak of Gold Core realm, once such a situation occurred, the outcome would be really terrible. No. Look over there. Liu Zhou stammered. He couldn't utter a complete sentence for a long time, as if he was having a convulsion. He pointed ahead in a daze. Liu Zhou looked in the direction of his finger. With just a glance, he was stunned and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. After a long time, he gasped in disbelief and whispered, "Oh my God! The world is really big and full of strange things. In this kind of place, we can actually meet someone who is having sex in the wild. My God, this woman's body looks so fucking hot. It's more than that. Don't you think this woman looks familiar?" Liu Zhou continued to stare straight ahead and said, "Hiss, now that you mention it, it's true. Oh my God, isn't this Hui Yudi, one of the two beauties in the morning? Why isn't she with Brother Ren? Instead, she's having sex with another man here. I didn't know she was so wild before." Sun Baolu was shocked. More than wild, she is almost unrestrained. I used to think that this girl was an iceberg snow lotus, always with a pure and holy look. I didn't expect that she would become so coquettish when she came to West Island. She actually let that man lie under her skirt and suck. My eyes are so dazzling. Liu Zhou rubbed his hands with his eyes shining. This kind of scene was so exciting that any man couldn't hold it. Tsk. I also want to go and lick her, even in my dreams. Sun Baolu couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Hey, do you think I don't want to? Liu Zhou rolled his eyes at him and said with pity, "All the good cabbages are taken by pigs. It's a pity that no matter how wild this little hussy is, she is doomed to have no share in it. If you dare to have this wicked idea, aren't you afraid that Brother Ren will kill you?" "I'm just saying. I don't have the guts." Sun Baolu shrank his neck and swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva greedily before saying, "But this Hu Shuelian is actually having sex with another man here. Isn't our Brother Ren wearing a big green hat on his head? Should we go and take care of it?" Hearing this, Liu Zhou couldn't help but be a little tempted. At this time, if he went and took care of it, wouldn't it be a good opportunity to take advantage of them? Even if he couldn't touch them, at least he could see them more clearly. After all, they were the two beauties in the morning, goddesses in the eyes of ordinary disciples like them. However, Liu Zhou immediately suppressed this tempting idea. He patted Sun Baolu's head angrily and said, "Do you dare to go? That guy is a master of the nascent soul stage." At this time, in order to treat Hui Yudi's poison, Lin Yi had to circulate his true qi all the time to prevent the poison from invading his body. Although his body was immune to poison, there was always a higher mountain. What if the poison of this 8-legged tooth insect was more violent than imagined? There was no chance for this kind of thing to happen again. Once something went wrong, he would definitely die. Therefore, at this moment, the aura of a master at the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul stage was fully revealed. Even though there was a distance between them, Liu Zhou and Sun Baolu could see it clearly. The two of them were only in the gold core stage. At this time, of course, they didn't dare to jump out and ruin the good thing. Put yourself in their shoes and think about it. If they were having sex in the wild and were disrupted, they would definitely kill in anger. This man was a master at the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul stage. The two of them together were not his opponent, not to mention Huayudi, a master at the peak of the nascent soul stage. They didn't dare to move. What do we do? Are we just going to sit here and watch? Sun Baolu frowned unwillingly. Since he couldn't take advantage of it, he could only enjoy it from a distance. Chapter 4678. Ugh, then there's nothing to say. Let's run quickly? Sun Baolu shrank his neck. Compared to admiring Hua Shuelian's coquettish look, his own life was more important. Don't worry. Leave some evidence before we run. Later, we will let Brother Ren enjoy it. Li Yuzhou said as he took out a digital camera from his backpack. In order to curry favor with Huayudi, Ren Zhongyuan had spent a lot of money to buy it from the Central Chamber of Commerce. Unfortunately, Huayudi didn't even look at it before throwing it back. So, after going around in circles, it still ended up in the hands of his follower. No matter where Ren Zhongyuan went, his follower had to carry it for him. This time was no exception. Click click. Li Yuzhou took 2 pictures in a row in front of him, then he turned around and ran without saying anything. Even if the other party was busy having sex in the wild before and didn't find him, he would definitely be discovered this time. If he didn't run, he would be a fool. Sun Baolu looked at it reluctantly, then he followed Li Yuzhou and fled in a hurry, for fear that the other party would recover. They didn't know that the two of them had been noticed by Lin Yi from the beginning. Although the distance was not close, and he couldn't hear what the two of them were talking about, Lin Yi had received training since childhood. Always observing the environment was the introductory course of an assassin. Even without divine sense, he could clearly detect the two of them. However, he didn't dare to further lock with divine sense at this time. After detecting the two of them, he felt that a light flashed, and then the two of them ran away. It wasn't that Lin Yi didn't want to get up and catch these two sneaky guys. The problem was that he was busy treating Huayudi's poison. He must be fully focused at all times. He didn't even dare to release his divine sense. He was afraid that he would be disturbed if he was distracted. How could he stop halfway? These two weren't important to Lin Yi, so it didn't matter if they ran. As long as they didn't do anything bad, the urgent matter at hand was to suck out all the poison in Huayudi's body as soon as possible. Otherwise, not only this chick would suffer. Even the Thunder Schwanting would definitely have no chance. After another half an hour, Lin Yi's whole mouth was completely numb by the venom. Huayudi's calf regained some color, and it wasn't as ghastly as before. Huayudi moaned as she opened her eyes. This was a normal reaction after most of the toxins in her body had been sucked out by Lin. However, she immediately screamed when she opened her eyes. Anyone who woke up and saw a man burying his head under her skirt would definitely have the same reaction. Huayudi was both angry and embarrassed. She screamed and lifted her leg to kick Lin. However, the result made her even more frightened. She suddenly found that she couldn't move her legs. At this moment, although Lin Yi had helped her suck out most of the poison, there was still some left. Moreover, the leg was the most important part of the bite. Even with Lin Yi's strong physique that was immune to poison, just helping her suck out the poison made his mouth numb. If she could lift her leg and kick him at this time, then she would really be seeing a ghost. You big pervert! What have you done to me? Why did you fix my body in place and not let me move? Huayudi was so embarrassed and angry that tears came out. She had a pure body and had never even held a man's hand before. How could she endure such a sudden and huge stimulation? At this moment, she wanted nothing more than to perish together with this shameless beast, Lin. What nonsense are you talking about? Lin Yi was stunned when he heard this. He then raised his head with a strange expression. The worst thing was that the corner of his mouth hadn't been wiped clean, and there was saliva that could easily make one's imagination run wild. What made people even more speechless was that his mouth was a little numb. At this moment he spoke in a muffled voice. People would think that he had swallowed something in his mouth. Huayudi almost fainted when she saw this. At this moment, not only her legs, but her entire lower body was basically numb. Moreover, Lin Yi just happened to be lying under her skirt. She thought that Lin Yi had been sucking on her private parts. Immediately, she was shocked and angry. She scolded, "You shameless! You bastard! Fuck!" Lin Yi finally understood the misunderstanding and immediately stood up. He coldly stared at Huiyuti and said, "Little girl, what do you want? I risked my life to help you suck out that strange worm's fatal poison, and you still call me a shameless bastard? Fine. Since it's like this, you can slowly lie here. I won't accompany you anymore, bye-bye." The relationship between Lin Yi and this little girl couldn't be said to be good. This time, he had risked his life to treat her poison, which was already extremely benevolent. He didn't expect that the other party didn't even know a fart and actually scolded him. Really, a good person can't be a good person. A dog that bites Lu Dongbin doesn't recognize a good person's kindness. Seeing that after Lin Yi finished speaking, he patted his butt and left without hesitation, Huiyuti suddenly remembered that she seemed to have been bitten by something. Then very quickly, her whole body went numb and she fainted. So it really wasn't Lin Yi's doing? Did I misunderstand him? Thinking of this, Huiyuti subconsciously moved. She discovered that other than the leg that wanted to kick Lin Yi, although the other parts of her body were a little numb, they weren't completely immobile. Especially the upper half of her body that was less affected by the poison, she could basically move freely. But Huiyuti was a little dumbfounded. She wasn't a one-track-minded idiot. The facts were in front of her, and it could be said that it was obvious. Just now, the poison of the strange worm could knock her down in the blink of an eye. With such a strong poison, if no one detoxified it for her, the consequences would be obvious. But now, her body was much better. This meant that Lin Yi was indeed detoxifying her just now. It was just that because the poison was in a special place, this posture was more likely to be misunderstood. Wait. You wait. Huiyuti didn't dare to hesitate anymore. She hurriedly screamed and wanted to get up to chase after Lin. Not only did she wrongly blame a good person, but if Lin Yi really abandoned her in a fit of anger, with her current state, she couldn't even stand up. Being left here alone was simply impossible to call for help. At that time, if anything happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. What else do you want? Lin Yi turned around and glanced at her. He said unhappily, "Isn't it exactly what you want for a shameless bastard like me to stay away from you? Lest I do something to you that can't see the light of day again. It's good to break up like this. Don't worry, I also save trouble. It's the best of both worlds." Don't go. Huiyuti's pretty face blushed. If it wasn't for the veil covering her face, it could be seen that her face was so red that it was about to drip blood. She weakly muttered, "Sorry, I wrongly blamed you." Chapter 4679. Lin Yi turned around and walked back to Huiyuti's side. He didn't really want to leave. After all, leaving a weak girl who couldn't move in this dangerous wilderness was something he couldn't do. "Thank you." Huiyuti thanked him softly with a red face. At the same time, she was a little surprised. She thought that Lin Yi would really leave after suffering such injustice. She didn't expect him to be so easy to talk to. She really didn't see it before. She didn't know why, but after this misunderstanding, Huiyuti felt that Lin Yi had become a lot more reliable. At the very least, it was a completely different image compared to the one she had when she was trying to extort money from him. Unexpectedly, just as her impression of him improved, Lin Yi's next words caused the trust that she had built up with so much difficulty to collapse by a lot. "You're welcome, but we have to have a good talk." Talk about what? Huiyuti had just woken up. Her head was still a little swollen, and she couldn't react for a moment. "Of course it's to have a good talk about repayment. You can't be so naive to think that I would save you for nothing, right? In any case, you're a genius disciple from Morning Pride Academy. You shouldn't be so ignorant of the ways of the world, right?" Lin Yi looked at Huiyuti with a sneaky smile. "Do you want?" Huiyuti saw Lin Yi's expression and immediately became nervous again. It was just that before, it was pure shock and anger, but now, she couldn't help but have some shyness of a young girl. She was originally beautiful and moving, but now, she became even more covetous. There was a kind of temptation that could be plucked by anyone. Lin Yi's eyes couldn't help but light up. This time, I almost lost my life when I helped you suck out the poison. I believe that you understand the dangers involved the most. Of course, the repayment is not lacking. Linny paused. Looking at Hui Yudi's little heart thumped wildly, then said, "So, when the time comes, we have to change the way we split the Thunder Xian vine. You get 20 and I get 80. You don't have any objections, right?" Hui Yudi was dumbfounded. The nervousness and shyness in her heart disappeared in an instant. She thought that Lin Yi had seen something he shouldn't have seen under her skirt and wanted to use this opportunity to make some unreasonable demands. After all, it was common for someone to repay a life-saving debt with their body. Hui Yudi had always been very confident in her looks, and it was because of this that she had to cover her face. Otherwise, men would chase after her like flies that couldn't be driven away, and there would be too many troubles. Under such circumstances, she naturally thought that Lin Yi would also make such a request, but she never expected that. This guy had been beating around the bush for half a day just to say this. Hui Yudi was both angry and amused at the same time. Looking at the serious Lin Yi, she was speechless for a long time. She really didn't know how to describe this feeling. If she was someone from the secular world, she might say, "I've even taken off my pants, and you're showing me this? What about me? This is already a very small return, okay? Think about it, I saved your life. Is there a problem with that?" Lin Yi said with a matter-of-fact expression. Hui Yudi didn't know why, but she was suddenly in a good mood, and the corners of her mouth curled up as she said, "No, we agreed on 370. This is this. Then didn't I let you suck it for nothing?" Lin Yi glanced at her. "Anyway, I'm done. It's useless for you to go back on your word. 370 is 370. As for you detoxifying me, I can think of another way to repay you," Hui Yudi said with a proud smile. She didn't feel this way before, but now she felt that bickering with Lin Yi wasn't a bad thing. Are you burning the bridge after crossing the river?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh, but his face still had a victorious expression. He said with a smile, "It's a pity that you're burning the bridge a little too early. You haven't even completely crossed the river. Aren't you digging your own grave by burning the bridge now?" "What do you mean?" Hui Yudi looked at Lin Yi's expression and couldn't help but twitch. "It's very simple. Aren't you still so numb that you can't move? This means that the poison hasn't been completely sucked out. What I helped you just now was only some of the poison left on the surface. However, during this period of time, some of the poison has already been absorbed by you. It has already integrated into your body and is difficult to remove. So, I estimate that in a few more hours, the poison will enter your vitals," Lin Yi said with a faint smile. Hui Yudi was no longer in a good mood. She was instantly frightened by Lin Yi and was at a loss of what to do. She said with a face full of fear, "Is this true or false? You're not lying to me." "Whether it's true or false, won't you know after feeling it yourself? You should know better than me about this kind of thing. Take a look at how far the poison has developed in your body. If the poison has really been completely removed, why is your leg still unable to move?" Lin Yi said indifferently. Hui Yudi didn't dare to be negligent. She carefully felt it according to Lin Yi's words and her heart sank. It was just as Lin Yi said, the poison that hadn't been sucked out had already integrated into her body through her blood. If it continued to develop, even the gods wouldn't be able to save her. "How is it? Have you thought it through?" Lin Yi crossed his arms and stood calmly at the side as he looked at her. That Kaizi was right. You really are a eunuch. Hui Yudi couldn't help but be a little angry. She pitifully blinked her eyes and pouted. "I've already begged you so much, but you still want to take advantage of me. And it's this kind of advantage. What? Then do you want me not to be a eunuch and take advantage of you in other ways? Or do you want me to just?" Lin Yi heard this and couldn't help but smile playfully. Hui Yudi was suddenly speechless. Only then did she realize the ambiguity in her words. Her pretty face blushed again. This time, even her veil was slightly reflected. She quickly buried her head in her chest and said in a muffled voice, "Oh, 280 is 280. Quickly help me detoxify." "That's more like it. It may be a little painful next. You have to bear with it." Lin Yi smiled and immediately knelt on the ground again. He put his mouth on the other party's wound. His mouth was originally numb, but now that he had rested for a while, it had completely recovered. Hui Yudi let out a low moan as she felt Lin Yi sucking on her lips. She blushed at her own reaction. Her legs were still numb, but she could more or less feel them now because of the large amount of toxins that had been expelled from her body. Chapter 4680. She didn't know what Lin Yi's reaction was, but Hui Yudi was already blushing. She let a man lie under her skirt and suck on her wound, and she couldn't help but let out such an ambiguous moan. What was going on? As a girl with a pure heart, Hui Yudi was obviously very sensitive to this aspect of shame. After letting out a subconscious moan, she immediately gritted her teeth and held it in. She couldn't let out a second moan even if she died. Otherwise, how could she face Lin Yi in the future? Just thinking about this kind of thing was embarrassing. However, after a short while, Hui Yudi's body suddenly trembled slightly, and she couldn't help but let out another moan. In fact, this couldn't be blamed on her. If Lin Yi was simply sucking on her wound, she could actually barely endure it. However, at this moment, there was suddenly a warm vital energy in her body. It flowed through her meridians, and every time it flowed, it would bring something from her body that shouldn't be there. It was the poison that the eight-legged tooth clawworm had fused into her body. Not only was this feeling not painful at all, but it was also very warm and comfortable. In addition, as the poison decreased, the stimulation from Lin Yi's sucking on her wound became stronger. Hui Yudi couldn't help but feel like she was floating. When she came back to her senses, she felt that something was wrong with her whole body. "What's wrong with me?" Hui Yudi said in a daze as she resisted the comfortable and stimulating feeling that constantly attacked her scalp. However, this pitiful willpower was quickly shattered by the next wave of feeling. What was this girl thinking? Listening to Hui Yudi's faint moans, Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little speechless. He had painstakingly sucked out the poison for her, and at the same time, he had to control the all-purpose vital energy to swim in her body. He thought this process would be more painful, but he didn't expect her to sound like she was enjoying it. Although he was speechless, Lin Yi couldn't stop and say anything at this time. As long as Hui Yudi resisted and didn't move, he would let her do whatever she wanted. However, Lin Yi soon felt that he had made a mistake because he found that Hui Yudi's moans didn't stop. On the contrary, it showed signs of becoming more and more frequent and intense. It was simply out of control. Listening to this seductive voice, even Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little restless in his heart. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Although this chick was a little straightforward when they first met, most of the time she still had the temperament of an iceberg snow lotus. He didn't expect her to be so open at this time. Little did he know that it was because of the poison. Hui Yudi couldn't control her feelings at all. As a master of the peak yuaning stage, the powerful restraint was not useful at this moment. It was completely the instinctive reaction of the body. However, even though she couldn't control herself, Hui Yudi's mind was still very clear. She could clearly see all of her reactions. She was so embarrassed that if there was a crack on the ground, she would have already crawled into it. "Call me whatever you want. After I recover my ability to move, just don't kick me," Lin Yi muttered in his heart. He immediately concentrated on using his all-purpose true qi to eradicate the last bit of poison. Unexpectedly, just as he was about to succeed, Hui Yudi suddenly cried out again. A warm current seemed to be uncontrollable. Lin Yi's position was simply unbiased, and he just happened to be drenched. This scene came too suddenly. Lin Yi was completely caught off guard, and his whole body was immediately stunned. He faintly felt that it was somewhat familiar. After thinking for a long time, he finally remembered. It was the same situation when he was treating the young Miss Poison in the past. He was simply drenched to death. Lin Yi stared blankly for a long time and didn't move. After a long time, he lowered his head with a speechless expression. He eliminated the last bit of poison in the other party's body and silently stood up. At this moment, Hui Yudi's whole body was already limp. Even though she knew that she had regained consciousness, she still curled up on the ground and didn't dare to move. She had an ashamed look on her face. Needless to say, this chick looked even more beautiful at this moment. Lin Yi suddenly shook his head speechlessly. He thought to himself, the one who was drenched just now was me. I haven't said anything yet, and you're still shy. However, to be honest, Lin Yi didn't have much resistance or dissatisfaction with this matter. He didn't have much resistance in his heart either. Anyway, he didn't smell any strange odor, and after all, she was a rare beauty. In his opinion, this matter was a loss that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But in the eyes of other men, it might be a dream, so he just endured it. The two of them were silent for a long time. Lin Yi helplessly waited at the side, but Huiyuti buried her head like an ostrich and didn't move. It was almost midnight. How long was this chick going to be shy? However, at this time, if it was any other girl, they would be ashamed. Huiyuti's reaction was normal. Lin Yi thought about it and had to take the lead to break the silence. He comforted her, in fact, you don't have to be embarrassed. It's a natural reaction of the human body. I just gathered the poison absorbed from your body through the meridians and then used this method to expel it from your body. So it's expected. There's nothing to be shy about. These words were simply nonsense. It was just to find a justifiable excuse for Huiyuti. In fact, it was not the case at all. The little bit of poison that her body had absorbed had already been crushed into powder by Lin Yi's 5 elements murderous aura. Compared to the original all-purpose qi, the 5 elements murderous aura had a more obvious healing effect. This was a new discovery that Lin Yi had just made during the process of curing the poison. In the past, except for people like Lin Yi who had the 5 elements physique, the 5 elements murderous aura was an extremely fatal existence for any cultivator. It was so fierce and overbearing that no one could withstand it. However, in the process of curing the poison, Lin Yi suddenly discovered that the 5 elements murderous aura's healing effect was far stronger than the all-purpose qi. More importantly, it also had the characteristics of the all-purpose qi. As long as he controlled it well, it would not cause any harm to the opponent. In the end, it could be absorbed by the opponent. Simply put, it was simply an upgraded version of the all-purpose qi. It was extremely overbearing when used to attack, and it was always successful when used to heal. This was the best description for the 5 elements murderous aura. This sudden and unexpected joy made Lin Yi rejoice. Being able to find the giant electric eel in the deep sea was simply a blessing that couldn't be cultivated for several lifetimes. The 5 elements murderous aura itself was an endless huge treasure. Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders at Huiyuti who was still lying on the ground. He had already paved the stairs for her. If she still didn't get up, then he really didn't know what to do. Chapter 4681. In any case, he couldn't just lie down like this. Lin Yi didn't want to waste time on this kind of thing. Looking at Huiyuti's limp appearance, to be honest, Lin Yi was also quite puzzled. He could understand the first few snorts, but why did it become like this in the end? Only God knew. He couldn't understand it himself. A voice popped up in Lin Yi's mind just as he was cursing Lin Yi. You've probably made her high. Cough, cough, cough. When he was immersed in thinking, this suddenly happened. Lin Yi was almost scared crazy. He choked a few times before he could barely hold it in. He complained speechlessly, "Senior Ghost, you scared me to death." "How am I scared you? Didn't you say that only God knows? That's why I helped you analyze it." The ghost laughed strangely. There was even a hint of schadenfreude in its tone. "Okay, but Senior, can you pay attention next time? Don't make me crazy. It's not good for you." Lin Yi shook his head helplessly. He paused and added, "Senior, your English is quite good. If I didn't know you were the former Azure Dragon, I would definitely fight with anyone who dared to say that you were a native of the Heavenly Stage Island. Hee, I can even learn the ancient language of you humans without a teacher, let alone this kind of bird language. Do you believe it?" The ghost said in a disapproving tone. Lin Yi was speechless again. The existence of this ghost was really unreasonable. In addition to the most instinctive fighting and killing, it even had such a terrible talent for this kind of thing. How could the students in the secular world endure this? Just as Lin Yi was communicating with the ghost, Huiyuti seemed to understand Lin Yi's words just now. She reacted a little slowly. She blushed and whispered like a mosquito, "Really? You're not lying to me?" The reason why she was so shy was that she had been wondering whether she would be a fucking woman. No matter how innocent Huiyuti was, she was still a nascent soul great circle expert. Moreover, she wasn't young at all. Although no one would mention this to her, she could still read books. Within the scripture depository of the Morning Pride Academy, there were all sorts of books, some of which were related to this aspect. There were also some very specialized books, specifically researching on how to dual cultivate with a man. After all, it was a female academy. There were bound to be some disciples who chose this path. It was also under such an atmosphere that Huiyuti had once flipped through such books out of curiosity. Thus, she knew that some women would have such a reaction at that time. However, not all women would be like this. Only a small portion of them would be like this. She had always thought that she was very pure, so how could she be like this? If that was all, it would have been fine, but the problem was that she actually sprayed Lin Yi all over Lin Yi when he was treating her. How could he still have the face to go out and meet people, especially in front of Lin Yi? No, what's in it for me to lie to you? Can you give me 10% more? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh in his heart. However, on the surface, he acted serious. Otherwise, he couldn't guarantee that this girl wouldn't be embarrassed to death. Right now, the most important thing was to hurry up and find the Thunder Shen Vine. He didn't have so much time to waste. After hearing Lin Yi's answer, Huiyuti immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Although she was still a little shy, she wasn't as ashamed as she was before. Since this was a normal detoxification process, it meant that it wasn't her problem. It meant that she wasn't the kind of woman described in the books. That was enough. Lin Yi's expression at this moment had a bit of a smile that wasn't a smile. In fact, it was only because he was communicating with the ghost through his divine sense. However, in Huiyuti's eyes, it naturally had a different meaning. This girl was so shy that she couldn't even lift her head. After finally finding a way out, she immediately blushed. It's all because of you. I'll deduct 10% from you. Let's make it 30-70. Huiyuti mustered up her courage to look at Lin Yi and said angrily. This time, Lin Yi was completely speechless. What was wrong with this woman? He risked being buried with her to save her life, but in the end, she ate this little benefit back. Wasn't she turning hostile a little too fast? It seemed that the old saying was right. Only women and vile people were difficult to raise. What? Do you have an opinion? Huiyuti saw Lin Yi's strange expression and her pretty face blushed. She snorted and said, "Let me tell you, if I tell others about today's matter, for the sake of my reputation, my master will definitely kill you." Huh. Lin Yi suddenly widened his eyes. He was just wondering why this girl suddenly became a little unruly. In the end, when he suddenly heard this sentence, he almost choked to death. This kind of thing could actually be used to threaten him. What kind of strange thinking was this? If she went out now, didn't she know that the one who would be the most humiliated would be herself? Or was it really, as she said, that she had always been cultivating, and her mental age was far younger than ordinary people, so she didn't understand the basic ways of the world? Seeing that Lin Yi was stunned by her words, Huiyuti's mouth curled up proudly. She finally got rid of the embarrassment from before. Her eyes curved into two delightful arcs, and she said with a proud smile, "Now you have nothing to say, right? Humph, then it's decided happily." Huiyuti was instantly in a good mood. These were the words that Lin Yi had used to mock her. Now she could finally use them on Lin Yi. Giving him a taste of his own medicine, this kind of feeling was great. Hee, there's no use in going out. Who knows, it might even have the opposite effect. Lin Yi faintly smiled disapprovingly. What do you mean? Huiyuti looked at Lin Yi suspiciously. You said it yourself. Your master and the deputy island master of Shanghai Tianhua are good friends. Since I'm his personal disciple, who knows, after your master hears about this, he might simply push the boat with the current and directly marry you to me as a cultivation companion. At that time, there's no medicine for regret. Lin Yi slightly raised his eyebrows and smiled. In your dreams? Huiyuti's pretty face blushed slightly as she lightly spat. Her cheeks were once again filled with fiery clouds. The sensitive word, cultivation companion, caused her body to subconsciously go limp, and she instinctively recalled the embarrassing scene just now. Chapter 4682. You really know how to take advantage of the situation. If I give you a ladder, you can go to the sky, right? My master and deputy island master Shangguan are good friends, that's true, but your deputy island master Shangguan's personal disciple. Hui Yudi had a look of disbelief on her face, but when she said this, she suddenly froze. Not to mention anything else, Lin Yi's previous intimate performance with Shanghai Laner was real, and although his realm was only at the peak of the early stage of nascent soul, it could be seen from the previous fight with the humanoid vine that his real strength was by no means so simple. At least, he was an existence that could fight against enemies of a higher level. In addition, he just treated her with a magical method. Each and every one of these things was not something that an ordinary disciple of the North Island could have. As the saying goes, a great teacher produces a great disciple. A person like Lin Yi, no matter how one looked at it, could not be taught by an ordinary cultivator. The person who could be his master must be an unfathomable big shot, and the person in the North Island who met this condition seemed to be Shanghai Tianhua. You can't really be? Hui Yudi couldn't help but change her expression, unable to hide her surprise, and asked. Almost. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. He did not intend to hide this kind of thing, nor did he intend to deceive Hui Yudi. Although there was no official master-disciple relationship, in fact, everyone in the 3 pavilions of the North Island from top to bottom had long regarded him as the personal disciple of Shanghai Tianhua. Even Shanghai Tianhua himself had a similar attitude, otherwise he would not pay so much attention to Lin Yi and would not take the initiative to try to help Lin Yi. If Lin Yi announced to the public that he was his personal disciple, his attitude must be tacit and maybe even fake it for real. Is this a prophecy of mine? Hui Yudi suddenly didn't know what to say. She had said this before to deal with Ren Zhongyuan and the others, but she did not expect it to be true. It was so strange. This word is not used to describe a good thing, right? Don't bully me because I'm uneducated. In any case, I went to university properly. Lin Yi corrected him with a straight face. These words were a little shameless. It was true that he was cultured, but that was all learned before he debuted. As for going to school, it was simply a pretense. It was pure nonsense. University? Okay. Hui Yudi stared blankly for a moment, her eyes sizing up Lin Yi again, as if she wanted to see through all of his secrets. After a moment, her eyes suddenly lit up and she said, That's right. Since you and Shangguan Laner are so close, then she must be a good match that Deputy Island Master Shangguan has designated for you. Say, if she finds out that you've done something with other girls outside, will Shangguan Laner kill you out of anger? When she said this, Hui Yudi's tone was full of schadenfreude, as if she really felt that she had grasped hold of Lin Yi's weakness. After all, letting a direct disciple marry a descendant of a relative would make the relationship between the two parties closer and more reliable. This kind of thing could be seen everywhere on the Heaven Stage Island. Shangguan Laner was the pearl of Shangguan Tianhua. If she wanted to get married, the other party would either be a nephew of some super big shot or a direct disciple of Shangguan Tianhua. There was no third choice. And this Lin Yi, although he was quite irritating at times, it was undeniable that this person was extremely outstanding in all aspects. However, it was undeniable that this person was extremely outstanding in all aspects. He was indeed a rare, one-in-a-million match. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys moonlight first. Shangguan Tianhua would definitely not let him marry another woman. No way, why would you want to kill me? Lin Yi didn't know what was going on. Why not? Absolutely, this is the most basic common sense. Which woman is willing to let her husband be with another woman, not to mention Shangguan Laner, the little princess of the North Island? Hui Yudi said with a face of certainty. Hee, then do you know why I specifically came to participate in this low-level broken trial? Lin Yi smiled at Hui Yudi's determined gaze. Low-level? Broken trial? Hui Yudi was a little stunned. The West Island trial was ranked among the top 5 Heaven Stage islands, and the strength of this trial was generally at the nascent soul stage. Before, the dummy vine had already made them, the masters of the nascent soul stage, extremely embarrassed, and this was still a low-level broken trial? Of course, I can kill all the people here at will. Do I have nothing better to do? Why would I come to such a place to waste time? Although Lin Yi's tone was a little joking, there was no exaggeration in his words at all. This West Island trial was really not difficult for him. With Lin Yi's strength, the most suitable and valuable trial for him should at least be a dangerous place open to the masters of the profound ascending stage. There was no pressure at all now. It was simply whimsical to want to have a big harvest. If he could successfully get the Thunder Xian vine this time, he would be satisfied. As for breaking through in strength, he didn't even think about it. Hui Yuti couldn't help but roll her eyes at Lin Yi when she heard this. This tone was really big and it sounded like a joke, but through all the previous things she faintly felt that there was a little possibility. This guy was really unfathomable. She couldn't help but ask, "Then what are you doing here?" Because of Shangguan Lena, she said she didn't want her best friend to marry others, so I can only reluctantly do it. Lin Yi shrugged with a smile. Best friend? Who is her best friend? Hui Yuti didn't respond for a while, and then suddenly remembered. She patted her head and said, Ning Xuefei? For most male cultivators, the main purpose of this West Island trial was not the treasures of heaven and earth, but to compete for the princess of West Island. However, she was a girl, so she didn't take this matter to heart from beginning to end. Until now, she suddenly remembered there was such a thing. Yes, who else could it be? Lin Yi smiled. Damn. Hui Yuti's eyes became more and more strange. She looked up and down at Lin Yi again, which almost made Lin Yi mad. Then she said faintly, "Isn't it said that only those very powerful people can have 3 wives and 4 concubines? What's more, Ning Xuefei is the princess of West Island. Even if a man marries her, she must be the master. Can he marry other women? Won't the people of West Island go crazy? Am I not powerful?" Lin Yi replied half-jokingly. As for the second question, he directly ignored it. Although this was indeed a very tricky problem, as long as he was strong enough, everything could be solved. Chapter 4683. Not the so-called people of West Island. Since Shanghai Tianhua could see Lin Yi's potential, so could Ning Shangling. As long as she knew that Lin Yi could become the reliance of the whole West Island one day, then nothing would be a problem. Humph, I really don't know where your confidence comes from. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I won't deduct your share, okay? Hurry up. Hui Yuti said as she slowly got up from the ground. After being paralyzed for such a long time, Hui Yuti's body was somewhat not used to it. She staggered before standing firm, but fortunately, Lin Yi was standing next to her. He reached out and held her in his arms. Hui Yuti let out a low cry and subconsciously held Lin Yi's arm, then fell into his arms. With the soft and fragrant body in his arms, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows subconsciously, and the corners of his mouth curved into a playful smile. Apart from other things, this girl's body was quite elastic. Ah! Hui Yuti suddenly screamed and hurriedly escaped from Lin Yi's arms. She blushed and didn't dare to look at him. She lowered her head and walked forward desperately. Hey, be careful. Don't be bitten by some weird things like 8-legged tooth clasp worm again. Seeing this, Lin Yi hurriedly chased after her. It was midnight now, and he could only distinguish the scene by the faint starlight above his head. Besides, he was in such a dangerous place. He was fine, but it was still very dangerous for Hui Yuti. Hui Yuti hurriedly slowed down, but she still didn't dare to look back at Lin. She was so shy not purely because she was hugged by Lin Yi, but because the smell of the man just now made her body a little soft instinctively. Subconsciously, the previous scene appeared in her mind. Although Lin Yi said it was a normal process of detoxification, but she was always a little worried that she would do it again. If so, she would really be ashamed to see others. What the hell is this girl doing? Behind him, Lin Yi shook his head helplessly. He had no choice but to quickly chase after them. At the same time, he deliberately spread out his divine sense in case something like this happened again. If this happened a few more times, time would be wasted. Hui Yuti lowered her head and didn't say a word. After that, Lin Yi didn't know what to say, so he simply kept his mouth shut. As a result, the atmosphere became somewhat ambiguous in the silence. Lin Yi was still all right. At most, he could only admire this girl's graceful back view from behind. However, Huiyudi had obviously become somewhat reserved and unnatural. For some unknown reason. In her mind, the scene of Lin Yi lying on top of her unconsciously surfaced, especially the most embarrassing scene. Huiyudi felt as if her whole body was on fire when she thought about it. She even felt as if her ears were about to be burnt off. It was too embarrassing. Although this matter was only between her and Lin Yi from beginning to end, and no one else would know, and there was an absolutely legitimate reason for detoxification, but even so, this also made Huiyudi, who was an iceberg snow lotus in everyone's eyes, very embarrassed. It was precisely because of this that Huiyudi no longer felt confident even when facing Lin Yi. Her speech was also not as free and unrestrained as before. Instead, it was replaced by a bashful and shy attitude. Even she herself was very unfamiliar with this kind of attitude of a little girl. This kind of thing was simply unimaginable in the past. She was a snow lotus on a mountain of ice. Any man, no matter how outstanding, would fall for her. Any man in front of her, no matter how outstanding, would be involuntarily attracted to her, and she would only disdain them. How could it be like now, where her mind was filled with the shadow of a man? The two of them walked in this strange silence. Lin Yi didn't say anything about this. Putting himself in her shoes, it was normal for a girl like Huiyudi to be so shy when encountering this kind of thing. Only shameless women like Murong Zhen or Si Tuqian would treat this kind of thing as a common occurrence. It was just that the silence along the way was really depressing to the point of making people uncomfortable. In reality, it wasn't only Lin Yi who felt this way. Huiyudi's desire to break this strange silence was even greater than his. Otherwise, she would really be immersed in her shyness and embarrass herself to death. Unfortunately, she really couldn't think of any topic at the moment. At this moment, there was even an inexplicable hope in the depths of her heart that Lin Yi would be able to stir up some small topics that the two of them could argue about. This was because not only would that solve this awkward and depressing atmosphere, but she also felt that it was actually quite interesting to have a little argument with this fellow Lin Yi. However, this was just Huiyudi's thoughts. After all, she and Lin Yi had only met for the first time. It couldn't be said that they truly understood each other. Especially in this kind of awkward atmosphere, whether it was her or Lin Yi, it was very difficult to find a suitable topic to divert their attention. Ambiguity would ferment, especially in this kind of awkward atmosphere. The feeling of ambiguity would constantly attack the depths of the mind. This was a normal person's natural yearning for beautiful things. Unless one's heart was dead, the mind would naturally think in this direction. Just like the current Huiyudi, she simply felt that she couldn't extricate herself. Every once in a while, Huiyudi would think of ways to sneak a glance at Lin. Then she would immediately turn her head back like a thief. It was a pity that her actions, which she thought was not a trace, were clearly seen by Lin. He couldn't help but laugh. This girl was actually quite interesting. Along the way, the two of them walked like this for the whole night. It was different from the expected danger. This night's journey was not as dangerous as Lin Yi had imagined. After all, according to reason, many monsters were nocturnal, and the night was the most dangerous time. However, in reality, it was the opposite. This night, they did not encounter any accidents. Lin Yi couldn't help but guess, could it be because this was a desert? The night was silent until it was almost dawn. Lin Yi, who was walking at the back, suddenly moved. Accompanied by a light dragon roar, a 5 elements murderous chi suddenly swept over the head of Huiyudi in front of him. Ah! Huiyudi suddenly exclaimed. She thought that Lin Yi was going to do something to her. She quickly turned her head to look at Lin Yi. For some reason, she didn't know why, but she said with a red face, "What are you doing?" "What do you mean I'm doing?" Lin Yi looked at her strangely and pointed in front of her. "Look for yourself. You are an expert at the peak of nascent soul stage. Can you walk a little more seriously